Hello, everybody in the chat room. Very excited for our big show today. We're gonna try to make it through all 31 teams, so we'll see how it goes. Here we go. The Pacific Division won the All-Star game, but nobody gives a shit. Yes! Thank you, everybody, for joining us for another episode of the Keeping Karlsson Fantasy Hockey Podcast, the best fantasy hockey podcast in the world, hosted by two guys who own Erik Karlsson in their keeper pools. I'm your host, Elon Dabrowski. With me, as always, for this 31 team, 31 take extravaganza, Brian Combe. All right, first edit point.
Oh God. Okay. I guess I'll let you have that one. Hello, Elon. Hello, everybody. Welcome to a very special episode of the Keeping Karlsson Hockey Podcast. We only do this once a year, and it's only the second time we've done it, so we can now officially call it an annual event. And Elon, it's timed perfectly with the Royal Rumble. I feel like it's a similar theme.
Is it really? Is the Royal Rumble soon? Who do you think's going to win?
I have no idea, but I did ask a friend who knows these things, and I forget his answer.
Okay, very helpful. Yeah, so I think it's fun. It's the All-Star break. Nothing much has been happening over the last few days. I think it's a good time for us to take a step back. We're all going into sort of the later halves of our fantasy seasons. We're going to be approaching our playoffs very soon. The trade deadlines are coming up for a lot of leagues. So I think let's take a step back. We're going to look at each team in the NHL and give at least one fantasy hockey take for each team. So that is a lot of content to come. We'll do our best to get through as much as we can in an hour and a half, so we cannot stall. Let's first, of course, mention, though, that we are that we are presented by the best fantasy hockey website out there, Let's of course mention first that we are presented by the best fantasy hockey website out there, DobberHockey.com. You guys know it's the place to go. It has everything. It's got great articles, daily ramblings, all the tools, like a ton of tools. They released this mid-season guide. You get a whole new set of projections for like a piddling amount of money. It's nothing, and the rest of the content is all free. It's amazing. Check it out, DobberHockey.com. With that, Brian, let's get started. Team number one, we're going to go alphabetical. Maybe next year we'll go reverse alphabetical. We'll mix it up. The second year in a row, we're going to start with the Anaheim Ducks. And we've got an injury to start the show off with. John Gibson left Thursday's contest against Winnipeg with a lower body injury after Blake Wheeler slid into him. I saw the replay of it. It was like, come on, Blake, learn how to stop. It's not too hard. But anyway, Blake gets to go to the All-Star game. John Gibson, we don't know how long he's going to be out. And that's the kind of thing with these All-Star weekends. A lot of the players we're going to talk about that are injured, we don't know. They might be back for Tuesday's game, or they might be out long-term. So we're going to speculate what would happen if John Gibson is out long-term. I guess that would mean that people should maybe be rushing to grab Ryan Miller while Gibson is out. Overall, though, Miller, he has great numbers overall in the year. He has a .929 save percentage in 14 games. So it seems like an awesome guy you want to have. Unfortunately, he's actually been lately not as good. He's been roughed up in 3 of his last 4 starts. So, Ryan, how much confidence do you have in Ryan Miller being able to put up at least, like, let's say, average numbers as a starter for the Ducks if he's put in that situation?
Feels to me like Ryan Miller is a Jonathan Bernier comparable, or maybe it's the other way around. In any case, they're both .915 on their career, former starters who found their way into backup roles in order to extend their careers. I mean, Ryan Miller and Jonathan Bernier don't exactly have identical career trajectories. Ryan Miller was a bona fide starter for a few years, well, more than a few years. Bernier was probably a starter for a handful of years, but I still think it's fair on the whole. And of course, the other parallel you can draw is Jonathan Bernier was a .915 backup in Anaheim last year, the spot where Miller currently resides on the Ducks depth chart. So my thinking is really like, I'm not saying they're exactly the same goalie or same person. I'm just drawing a bunch of parallels to maybe not even logically arrive at my conclusion, which is still, in my mind, a logical conclusion, that you could probably expect about the same from Miller if he does get starts in terms of being a .915 guy. Maybe he can go on some really big runs, win you a week or two if Gibson is out long term. Otherwise, I'm not expecting him to save the lights out. What's the opposite of shoot the lights out? Be a brick wall.
Okay, but I mean, it's funny because you're saying this comparable with Bernier. Bernier's been lights out, right? He's been a brick wall for the past few weeks. He's won owners their matchups. Ryan Miller lately has been terrible, but it seems like you're saying overall you think it doesn't really matter what happened before the All-Star break. You see John Gibson as a average goalie, and he's not someone that's going to blow you up. You should grab him. He's on a good team. Makes sense to me.
Yeah, what I was saying is that you were wrong if you expected Jonathan Bernier to play as well as he has. So you shouldn't expect Ryan Miller to do the same, but Ryan Miller could potentially do the same. He's not like a Harry Sateri, who we'll get to later in the show.
Yeah, we'll also talk about Bernier later in the show. We're going to talk about everybody. Okay, also on Anaheim, the lines have been shaken up lately. Actually, from Thursday, they were going with Getzlaf, Kasha, and Raquel as line one. You'll notice Corey Perry not there. We'll find out what line he was on. Line two was Kessler, Cogliano, JT Brown. Line three, Henrique, Ritchie, and Silverberg. And then all the way down line four, Corey Perry, playing with Vermette and Wagner. And then the top power play, also interesting. Getzlaf, Perry, Raquel, Adam Henrique, and Cam Fowler. So, okay, let's take a quick look at who's benefiting and who's hurting from these line combinations if they're going to stay this way. Obviously, one big benefactor is Andre Kasha. Obviously, one big benefactor is Andre Kasha, who on the top line, that's a great spot for him, playing with Raquel and Getzlaf. He has 4 points in his last 5 games, so he doesn't have anything in his last 2 games. But, you know, small sample. Should people be rushing to grab Andre Kasha as long as he's on the first line? He's been having a really decent season. I'm curious to know if you'd rather have him or maybe the other guy who's really benefiting from these line shakeups, Adam Henrique, who's on the top power play and on a nice line with Silverberg and Ritchie. So, I mean, I didn't expect that Henrique would still be fantasy relevant once Kessler and Getzlaf came back from their injuries way back when he got traded to the Ducks. But Henrique has 6 points in his last 5 games, and only one of those has come on the power play. So he should maybe even have a couple more if he benefits from that top power play spot. I had, like I said, given up on him, but now I feel like maybe he should be owned in a lot of formats, especially while he's on this top power play.
Yeah, he could be. I'm going to go back to Kasha first, though, and say that if you look even further back than you sliced it, he has 11 points in his last 13 games, and he's averaging more than 3 shots per game in that stretch, in spite of going pretty quiet in the shots column and points column for a few games. Adam Henrique had a great start as an Anaheim Duck, or I should say had a great start as a Duck, but then had 3 points in 15 games once Getzlaf came back and he was bumped down into the lineup. So it's nice to see Henrique back on track. That is a nice little line that he's found himself on. And circling back to what you've also said, Elon, he can be there because Ryan Kessler is presently with Cogliano and JT Brown. I have no idea how long that lasts. If I'm trying to choose who I want more between Kasha and Henrique, I'm going to say, well, Henrique's power play time is a luxury that I don't know if we can rely on continuing. So I'm going to go Kasha if you want to better try to guarantee yourself something like shots on goal on any given night. I can also see Kasha being the better guy beyond this week, assuming that Kessler gets back up to play with Silverberg before too long.
Okay, well, I was actually talking about... Wait, actually, I'm just a little confused with what you said. What about Kessler? Because Henrique bumped Kessler from the power play, and Kasha bumped Corey Perry from line 1.
Yeah, I didn't say anything about Kessler yet.
You just said, what is that last sentence you just said?
I said that, assuming that I said I prefer Kasha to Henrique longer, like beyond this week, assuming that Kessler is going to get back up to play with Silverberg.
What does that have to do with either of those people, Kessler playing with Silverberg? It's either Kasha bumps
because
Corey
right now
Perry.
Henrique is playing with Silverberg.
No, but, oh, I see. Oh, I get it. So you're not even referring to the power play. You're referring to their even strength.
Yeah, that was all even strength. And I did make a power play reference.
All right. Okay. Rough start, but to the show, I apologize. We're going to be on top of it moving forward. Okay, then obviously the 2 players hurt by these line shakeups would be Ryan Kessler, who's off the top power play. I was so sure he'd come back and be on line 2 in a power play 2. He's on neither of those things right now. And, like, he only has 6 points in 13 games. I'm very curious to know if you're going to call Ryan Kessler a snoozer at this point, especially in a league where we're not counting hits and faceoffs and some of these extra things that Kessler's good for. Then you got Corey Perry on line 4. No points in 5 of his last 6 games. He had a goal and an assist versus the Rangers on Tuesday. So I should say he has no points in 5 of his last 6 games, if that makes sense. Anyways, both of these guys seem like they might be approaching snoozer territory. Like, could people give up on Ryan Kessler and Corey Perry and forget about all these peripherals? Like, talking about straight up points.
One thing I'm not liking about Corey Perry so far this year is that he only has 24 shots in 13 games. That's less than 2 shots per game when in, last year we saw him beat 2 shots per game handily. The year before, he had just about 2 shots per game. Like, he's always been, at least generally, except for 2 years ago, he's been 2.5 or more shots per game, with a slight dip in the middle of all those years. And right now he is under 2 shots, which I'm not happy about. And he's only got 6 points because he scored 4 times on 24 shots, which isn't something like, okay, maybe only 3 times, but still, that makes a big difference. 6 points in 13 games is like manageable, whereas 5 points in 13 games seems really bad. That said, I feel like he's still getting up to full speed. He only cracked the 20-minute mark for the 2nd time this season in Anaheim's most recent game. Like, he's averaging essentially 17 minutes a night because he was eased in, and I feel like maybe he's still getting up to full speed. So we'll see if he is getting back up to full speed. Keep in mind, normal ice time for him last year was just over 21 minutes. The couple years before that, it was 19.5. This is what I want to see from him. I want to see him get these minutes for like 7 or 8 consecutive games, and then we'll have a sense of where he's going to be spending that time and what he's going to be doing with it.
Okay, that was Kessler?
Yeah. Oh, okay. As for Perry...
Yeah. Don't forget to like mention the player's name sometimes when you're on a long run like that.
I think I did.
I felt like I heard just he the whole time. I must have missed the first one, and then I didn't know who it was.
Okay, I got one for you. So that's Kessler. As for Perry, not someone you can consistently, like, especially we've talked about him before in this spot in the lineup, not someone you're that interested in. He still could be good for turns on the top power play and could be good for turns on the top line, which makes him like a streamer or someone if you really want to be patient with. But aside from that, if you're in a shallower league, Corey Perry is not necessarily someone you need to hang on to in his current deployment.
Yeah, so we'll have to wait and see how things look after the All-Star break. Perry has been on the top power play, as Tony's pointing out in the chat room, like I said earlier. But yeah, if he's going to be online for, but how long is that really going to last? Maybe that's just teaching him a lesson or something. So it'll be interesting to see then what happens to Kasha and with the Silverberg and all the whole situation. Anaheim, very interesting. Okay, let's move forward to the next team, Arizona Coyotes. Brian, did you know that Brendan Perlini has scored in each of his last 4 games? And he has 12 shots overall in those games. That's averaging 3 shots a game. He broke 20 minutes of ice time on Thursday for his first time this year. And Perlini's been playing on line 1 with Derek Stepan and Richard Panik. And he's also been on the top power play with Stepan, Panik, Dvorak, and Oliver Ekman-Larsson. So all of a sudden, out of nowhere, Brendan Perlini, to me, is kind of looking like the second best forward own on Arizona, at least in a 1-year league. Like, I'd say Derek Stepan is probably the guy you want the most. People might be yelling at their phones right now saying, like, what about Clayton Keller? But like, Keller's pointless in 4 of his last 5 games. He's not in the top 6. He hasn't been on power play 1. So I'm not so interested in him. I'm kind of curious to know, what are your expectations in the second half for Brendan Perlini?
He's an interesting one. 12th round pick of the Coyotes. And he had 19 points in 17 games to begin his... No, sorry. He wasn't in the 12th round. He was 12th overall. Duh. There isn't a 12th round in the NHL draft. Okay. Brendan Perlini is an interesting guy to look at. He was picked in the first round back in 2014, 12th overall, started playing pro just last season with the Tucson Roadrunners, graduated from the OHL, and promptly scored 14 goals and 5 assists for 19 points in 17 games, which was enough to earn him a call-up to the big team in Arizona, where he scored 14 goals in 57 games for the rest of the season. He's now matched that number in 14 fewer games played so far this season. In 43 games, Perlini is also 1 short of last year's assist total with 6 so far on the season. He's got pretty Cy Young-like stat lines in his young career so far. Perlini actually has 28 goals. Perlini also has the distinction of having scored 28 goals in his first 100 games, which is the best mark ever for a Coyotes rookie beginning his career. He beats Peter Mueller's previous record of 27 games played, which I don't know if that's a great bar to be associated with. And anyway, Perlini's 4 goals on his last 12 shots helped him get there. He's a career 15% shooter on 132 shots on goal, which isn't enough for us to know that he is a 15% shooter. He's going to need to take like 4 times as many shots before we can really get certain about that. But there's not a whole lot of competition in Arizona other than Derek Stepan in terms of fantasy owns. So sure, why not take him for a spin if he's out there? You're looking for some goals. Could be good in a deeper league.
Yeah, he's definitely someone I'll be watching. Brian, people kind of complain when we're mispronouncing player names. I don't know what they're going to do if we're mispronouncing city names. So it's Tucson, not Tucson, by the way.
Did I not say Tucson?
I'm pretty sure you said Tucson.
That would be really crazy if I said Tucson.
It'll be fun. When I go through the edit, I'll go back and see. But I noted it in my brain.
Dang.
So since we're on Arizona, in general, like we discussed last week, I see Arizona as a good sleeper team for the second half of the year. And I'd say Antti Ranta is someone I'd be grabbing if he's available in your free agency. Like, he's someone that I think has been showing himself to be very good now that he's finally like done with his injuries and he's really getting in there as a starting goalie. He's only led in a couple goals for each of the past few games. So, not really a question for you, Brian, but just want to throw it out to the listeners. We said it last week. I think that Ranta could be a really good sleeper candidate to have a better second half than his first half. And I think also guys like Perlini, like Richard Panik, I mentioned online one, like Christian Fischer, Christian Dvorak. Wait, they're not both named Christian, are they?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I just wrote Fischer and Dvorak in my notes. Then as I was saying, I was like, that can't be right. But it is. Okay, I think all these guys could potentially be producers on your teams. But for now, I think the guys on my mind are Perlini and, like I said, Antti Ranta, if he's somehow still out there.
You might have been thinking of Yuri Fischer and Radek Dvorak, but no, the new generation, everybody's named Christian or Braden. I think that's more accurate. As for Antti Ranta, we talked on this week's patron mailbag about the reasons why we think Arizona is trending up and why that could benefit Ranta and benefit you if you can get a hold of him. And of course, that patron mailbag is still available for all patrons to listen to forever.
There you go. KeepingKarlsson.com/patron. But we don't have time for promotion. We got to go to our next team. We're done 2 teams out of 31. It's been almost 20 minutes, so good for us. Okay, Boston. Brad Marchand suspended 5 games. He still got to go to the All-Star game, but whatever. That game is silly. But yeah, so Marchand has already missed 1 game. He's going to be out 3 games next week, and then 1 of the 4 games the week after, for those counting. Anders Bjork got called up from the minors. He jumped to line 1 with Pasternak and Bergeron. He had no points and 2 shots in the win over Ottawa. Then you've got Danton Heinen and Ryan Spooner, who have both been taking turns on the power play as like the 4th forward, like while Marchand was there. So now with Marchand out, it's been both Heinen and Spooner on the top power play. So all interesting people to consider. Heinen actually went cold for 4 games, but now has points in each of his last 2 games. Ryan Spooner had an assist yesterday, and he has 5 points in his last 6. So Brian, how would you rank these 3 players for next week with Marchand out if you want to go and grab a Bruin between Anders Bjork, Danton Heinen, Ryan Spooner? Who do you like the best of those 3?
It's really a bit of a crapshoot, although I think I do have a clear favorite who I would like to think is going to be the most successful. I'm going to say Danton Heinen is the one you want most of the 3. He was dropped en masse after 4 pointless games, which, by the way, was his longest scoring drought of the season. And now Heinen's back on track, and I wouldn't be shy at all about adding him. We've seen much more good than bad from him this year, so I'm going to go him. Then it really is a crapshoot. I don't know. I'll say Anders Bjork and then Spooner, because it's going to be hard for Bjork to get fewer points than Spooner if he's getting regular ice with Pasternak and Bergeron on the top line. I know Spooner has those power play minutes, which helps. It's probably about even.
And Spooner also plays at even strength with David Krejci. So, yeah, I think I would go Spooner, actually, because I could see Bjork being bumped from the top line. So, like, if you have to make a move, and if you have unlimited moves and you could switch on a dime, then sure. But if you have to pick for the whole week, I think I'd go Spooner. But yeah, who knows, right? But I agree with you. Danton Heinen's had really good runs this year. Let's see if he can keep this current one of 2 games so far going. Okay, next team, Buffalo Sabres. So Kyle Okposo, Ryan O'Reilly, Rasmus Ristolainen, all on the upswing and should be owned in all formats. Right? I know I rushed through those names. I said Okposo, O'Reilly, Ristolainen, all guys who we were disappointed in and concerned about at some points earlier in the season. All of them on fire right now. I feel like we don't even need to dig into these guys unless you disagree with me on any of them.
No, but I do want to give particular kudos to Rasmus. No, but I do want to give particular kudos to Rasmus Ristolainen, crushing it, 13 points. In his last 12 games, he has at least 1 point in 10 of his last 12 outings, 3 multi-point games, currently on a 5-game point streak, and plenty of hits if that helps you too. What finally a comeuppance for him and anyone who's been patient with him this entire time, paying dividends, finally.
Well, Brian, you could vouch for me. I've been telling you all season long that I think Rasmus Ristolainen is going to be great. Every time there's been a question on the patron Facebook group of this guy or Ristolainen, I've always said Ristolainen, and you've been sort of, I think, giving up on him at some points.
No, I don't think I've ever given up with you. No, I don't think I've ever given up on him. I think we've seen this possibility coming, but every time Rasmus Ristolainen had a point for the last 2 months, he said, oh, he's heating up. So, and then he didn't. He did nothing for a while. So this last time you said he's heating up, you got it. Good job.
You make it. I don't. It's not as if I message you about every single player in the league every time they get a point saying he's heating up. I had a feeling. I mean, how could he not? And how could also Sam Reinhart not continue the great run he's on right now? Because he's on the top power play with those three guys I mentioned, as well as I guess someone else. Oh yeah, Jack Eichel. Heard of him? Okay, so yeah, Sam Reinhart has been on the top power play, and he's been playing lately on line 2 with Ryan O'Reilly. He has 7 points in his last 5 games. He's a high draft pedigree guy. Like, he's not a nobody, this Sam Reinhart. He's finally starting to break out after a terrible start to the year. How do you like him compared to some of the other guys we've discussed so far? So, we talked about Henrique and Perlini and Bjork and Spooner. Let's keep track maybe moving forward of our top pick of these guys who are likely available in free agency. Where does Sam Reinhart rank with these other guys to you?
Well, first off, I'm going to separate Danton Heinen from the pack because I'm backing him. I'm going to think that he's probably one of the best options that we've spoken about on the show, and of similar groups or similar players that we're going to address, he probably still stays in the top quadrant, or however you want to define. But Sam Reinhart, I like him. I like his upside more than those other guys you mentioned. If he's finally figured something out, which I'm not sure he has, but as you mentioned, there is pedigree there. And I'm willing to take a chance on him ahead of all the rest of the group you just mentioned. So before Henrique, Perlini, Bjork, Spooner. Not sure about Kasha. That one's probably close, but maybe. Because again, upside. He has 3 goals on his last 9 shots for Sam Reinhart, but 2 of them were on the power play. So we can credit him a little more in thinking that maybe it's sustainable than if all 3 goals had come at even strength. If he can hold his spot in the lineup, which has not been a given in the past, which is why we've seen inconsistencies. We've seen inconsistency from him, and we've also seen him not be able to keep this up, even with fantastic line mates. So let's see what the next week or 2 brings. I'm keeping an open mind, and I'm hopeful that perhaps he can start delivering on some of the upside we've been holding out on.
Yeah, it's just right now this Buffalo power play is doing really well. I would want Sam Reinhart if I could get him, if I could fit him in. Next week's another one of these annoying weeks where like most of the games are on Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday, and I believe Buffalo is playing just on those days. Maybe I'll go confirm that while the next time you're talking, Brian. But yeah, so it might be hard to fit some of these guys we're talking about in. But yeah, Sam Reinhart looking good on the other side. Evander Kane crashing hard. He's been playing on line 3 with Pominville and Larson on the second power play. He's pointless in 5 now. Just 2 points in his last 12 games. Even his shots are down lately. Is Evander Kane starting to approach snoozer territory? Is he someone that people should start questioning if they should keep him on their roster? Or maybe should you not even worry about it because he's one of these like potential trade deadline deal guys that people are, always talking about, like, oh, he's probably get traded at the deadline. So can we really worry too much about Evander Kane? I'm curious to know, what's your take on him overall at this point?
Well, my stance on any deadline day speculation. Like, I'm not going to include that in any of my fantasy hockey projections. If there's a trade, I'll believe it when I see it. And even then, we don't know how the guy's going to be deployed when he does get to his new destination. So let's talk about Evander Kane and just what he's been doing in Buffalo and assume that he'll be in a similar situation the rest of the way. I know the trade rumors are flying, but we're just going to treat it that way. Kane has just 1 goal in the last month after notching 15 goals through the first 3 months of the season. So yeah, this is going really cold for him. The good news is he's still shooting plenty, right at 3 shots per game over this drought that he's in. His deployment is frustrating, but I imagine Kane can bounce back. A bump back into the top 6, of course, would help that, which should be doable with guys like Scott Wilson and Zemgus Girgensons playing ahead of him. And that is, of course, assuming he has that opportunity when Buffalo gives up on spreading the offense around, which is clearly what they're trying to do with Kane and Pominville on the 3rd line, but it hasn't been working. We'll see how long it either continues not to work or they decide to give it up, pop him back into the top 6, and I think that will provide him some more opportunities to snap out of what he's in.
So you're saying you wouldn't be dropping Evander Kane if you had him right now? You wouldn't even consider it?
No, I'm holding on, especially if your league counts shots. He's still helping you there.
Yeah, they're down a little bit lately, but overall, yeah, he was like doing insane at the start of the year. He was among the league leaders in shots. Unfortunately, he was among the league leaders in shots, and unfortunately, he's fallen pretty far from that at this point. Okay, next team, Calgary Flames. Brian, Matthew Tkachuk has 13 points in his last 13 games. That's over the past month, up to 34 points in 47 games on the season, which is a 60-point pace. We all thought that Matthew Tkachuk would have a great season, but I don't think we expected him to be this good. Like right now, with this run, like I said, up to a 60-point pace, do you think he'll continue this hot run and then break 60 on the season, or are you expecting him to slow down a little bit at some point? Obviously, it helps that he's been bumped up to the top power play recently.
You know, before I even answer that question, Elon, I want to circle back to Evander Kane because Tony is mentioning in the chat, like he's not even shooting, like certainly not at the crazy elite levels that he was at the start of the year. But if you look at his ice time, his minutes, like he's playing third line minutes now. He's lost 2, 3, even 4 minutes a night compared to some of his heavier duty nights in the past. And he's managed just 7 shots over his last 4 games. So that is super frustrating. But I'm not ready to give up on what I still think is shot on goal upside coming from him. If this continues for another week, then I'm really getting concerned and raising the red flag. But if I have him and shots count, I'm still hanging on. Okay, Elon. Okay, yeah. What?
Well, now that you say that, but like if he's still getting third line minutes, but I know you said, oh no, I'm not even going to think about trades because who knows what's going to happen. But like he's probably going to get traded, right? And in which case he won't be on the third line. So it's hard to give up. I'm just saying like it's really going to be hard to drop him. So I feel like even if he continues to be bad, I would maybe hold on past the trade deadline, even though that really burned me last year with Matt Duchene.
Yeah, okay. Like I said, I'm not going to think about where he ends up with a trade. I have to assume he's going to stay where he is until something else actually happens. But you're right. A change of scenery, it seems as though it's due for Evander Kane. So we'll see if he does end up somewhere else and in a better situation. In that case, hopefully he does better. But we saw last year, like we saw, I think was it last year, Thomas Vanek going to Florida and having his fantasy value sunk. Marty Hansel also changed teams and he did nothing as a member of the Minnesota Wild either. So it's not always a slam dunk.
Well, for sure. But I mean, Evander Kane right now, if he's going to continue playing third line and losing all these minutes, can't get much worse. Anyways, okay, we got 31 teams to get through. So I already talked about Matthew Tkachuk. What do you think about him?
I like him. I think high 50s is a fair spot to hope that Matthew Tkachuk is going to land. Breaking 60 would be wonderful. Not sure if it's really where you want to set your expectations. Like that is the bonus. That is the stretch goal. Tkachuk, the good thing about him is he's still managed 11 power play points, even without being a fixture on the top power play unit. 6 power play goals on 21 power play shots have certainly been a big part of him managing to collect 11 power play points from the second unit. So, you know, if he gets a bump up to the top power play unit, I don't know if he's going to be able to bump his pace any higher, but it could at least help him sustain what he's already up to. Did that make sense? Did you follow that?
I followed it a little, but he's been on the top power play now for like a month.
Okay, sorry.
I don't know why you're saying like if he does.
I meant like stays. Okay.
Want to start the whole thing over again?
No. 6 power play goals on. I'm going to start from where I said 21 power play shots has certainly been a big part of that. So maybe he scores a little less often on his power play shots. Maybe he doesn't keep that percentage up. But if he can stay on the top power play unit, then perhaps that can offset any regression we'd expect to happen from like losing that really high super shooting percentage that he's got on the power play. And Elon, I have a Calgary Flame to bring up too. Can I do that now?
Of course.
Is Mike Smith the most reliable fantasy goalie of 2017-2018? He's a wild 68.3 quality start percentage, second only to Pekka Rinne. So I guess by that measure, Rinne is the most reliable, but Rinne's also started 6 fewer games. Then you have, after those two, Vasilevsky, Holtby, and Crawford, but Rinne and Smith, like those are insane quality start percentages. Usually you're looking, if someone's at 60%, you're like, oh, that's really good. These guys are close to 70%. We'll see if they can keep that up through the rest of the year. And of course, it means that they're giving you league average or better in an outing and not like totally blowing up your numbers. And not blowing up your numbers, well, very often at all for these guys.
Okay, yeah. There's one goalie that jumped to mind right away that wasn't on your list. I have a feeling it might be because he hasn't played enough games to qualify for some metric you made. Marc-Andre Fleury, I think, has been the most reliable goalie in fantasy so far this year since he's come back from injury. Like, I feel like hasn't had any bad games. I can't even recall one day where someone was like, oh man, Marc-Andre Fleury blew me up. Just Vegas always wins. The Pacific Division won the All-Star game today. Surprise, surprise. Fucking Vegas. Oh. Surprise, surprise. Vegas in the Pacific Division. They can't lose.
Yeah, he is up there at an 83.3 quality starts percentage, which is absolutely insane. He's only started 18 games, so you're right, Elon. I was filtering out for goalies who have started more than half of their team's games this year, but we'll see if he can keep it up. He's never even been a 60% quality start goalie. He was in his Why don't I? Oh. He's never even been a 60% quality start goalie since the 2007-2008 season. So this is 11 since the 2007-2008 season. So this is 10 years later, and he's setting new career highs. I can't wait to see what he does over the next 30 starts. I think we might touch on him later in the show.
Maybe, but okay, but I mean, when's the last time Mike Smith has had a 68% quality start percentage? I feel like all these guys are surprising us. I guess Pekarine's done it before, obviously, but yeah, nice to see, and for sure, great. And for sure, Mike Smith, he's been great. Who hasn't been great, by the way, another older guy, much older than these other players, Jaromir Jagr on waivers. It's probably it for him in the NHL, right?
Could be. It sounds as though like there's an agreement. Everybody knows he's just going to finish his career in Europe now. And then you have people who are saying if he passes through waivers and the NHL's a joke. So we'll see what happens. I mean, I think people will probably know by the time they hear this. So you can shout at us wherever you are. Tell us what happened. And Elon, you said Pecorino has been this reliable before. Yeah, he's had a couple really good seasons. 67% twice is where he's topped out, and as for Mike Smith, he hasn't had the opportunity to be this reliable a goalie, just being shelled night in, night out in Arizona. So can't totally make that comparison. Whereas Marc-Andre Fleury was playing for the best team in hockey for several of those years. So I think he has had the opportunity to be this reliable before several times in the last 10 years. We'll see again if he can keep it up with Vegas. It would really be nice if he did.
Yeah, I mean, he was on a pretty good team on those cup-winning Penguins teams, but none of them were anything like the Vegas Golden Knights of this year. Come on, Brian. Okay, no. Let's go to our next team, and then we'll take a quick break. But okay, one more team before the break. Carolina Hurricanes. Sebastian Aho has been skating with the team, so it looks like the injury isn't as serious as we feared. I remember I saw it was like a concussion and a lower body injury. Sounded like he could be out a while, but now it's looking like he might be back next week. So that's going to be huge for him, huge for the Hurricanes. We already talked about the huge run he was on before he got injured. If he was dropped due to the injury, people need to rush to add him ASAP. I think that's obvious. I'm not even going to ask you about that. He's up to 37 points in 45 games now. That's a 67-point pace, much higher than we even expected for him. Sebastian Aho is great. Brian, who do you expect to have a better second half between 60-point pace Matthew Tkachuk and current 67-point pace Sebastian Aho?
I'm going to go Sebastian Aho. Thanks to his bigger role. Also probably the better raw skills of the two. And we know Aho is going to be very involved in the Hurricanes offense. As long as he's playing, I expect Aho to be able to outpoint Tkachuk. But, it's definitely going to be closer than we would have guessed at the start of the year.
Yeah, really fun to see all these young players doing so well. Brian, what's really fun about seeing these young players is you want to be able to tell your kids one day, like 30 years from now, I saw Sebastian Aho back when he was in his second season. You should have seen the way he skated. But you can only really say that if you saw him play live, And what's the best way to get tickets to live events? It's to get them through our sponsor for this week's episode, our friends at SeatGeek. SeatGeek is great. Buying tickets to sports and concerts can be complicated and confusing, but there's a better way to buy with SeatGeek. SeatGeek is the smartest, easiest way to get tickets to every type of live event, whether you're searching for a last-minute deal, planning a night out, or need to find the perfect gift. SeatGeek helps you find the best seats at the best prices, fully guaranteed. Brian, I'm going to a hockey game this Wednesday, the Leafs versus the Islanders. It was a birthday present from my lovely wife. If anyone wants to buy tickets to this game through SeatGeek, tweet at us at Keeping Karlsson. Let us know. Maybe we can meet up in the intermission. Say hello.
Your lovely and very intelligent wife. If you're listening to our show and you've never used SeatGeek before, here's something that's amazing for you. Specifically, you get $20 off your first SeatGeek purchase. Just download the SeatGeek app and enter promo code KEEPING today. That's promo code KEEPING for $20 off your very first SeatGeek purchase. Tweet us when you make it. Let us know. And tag SeatGeek.
Brian, are you trying to one-up me here on compliments for my wife? I think that she's not only lovely and intelligent, but I think she also has a very strong work ethic. So how about that?
She's also funny.
Yeah, but she also has really good taste. But anyway, enough about her. Let's talk about the Chicago Blackhawks, our next team. Somehow, Corey Crawford has gone from could miss the rest of the season to may join the Hawks on their post-All-Star Game road trip. So I'm going to stop trusting some of these sources on Twitter when they say that players are going to be out for the season. Anyways, good buy low time if owners of Corey Crawford like haven't heard the news and still just have it in their head that he's going to be out for the season. Obviously, he has a 929 save percentage on the year. He's been great. I don't even know if there's much to say about Corey Crawford. Obviously, he's a really good goalie, and that will mean that if you jumped and spent a lot of fab dollars or whatever, use your top waiver priority to get Anton Forsberg or Jeff Glass, like that's obviously going to be useless because Crawford's probably going to play a bunch of the games. The Hawks are going to need him to. And then Brian, another player who I think you might be able to let go of at this point is Jordan Osterley. He must be a snoozer at this point. I feel bad about this. He's pointless in 7 now. I liked him. He was on this hot run. He was getting all these minutes. He was even taking all these shots. I was saying on the podcast, hey, everyone, take a look. It's so rare. That's why I always say, actually, in our draft strategies, I say, like, you got to draft defensemen early just because it's so rare to find like a top power play defenseman who's doing well in free agency midway through the season. Osterley was looking like he could be one of those rare gems. So, I don't know. Now he's pointless in 7. Like I said, you could probably let him go. He's still getting huge minutes. He was a +4 on Thursday. So, that's on the ice for at least 4 goals that he just didn't get a point on. So you'd think he could have done a little bit better, but probably until he goes on a run, you could drop him, right?
Yeah, Jordan Osterley qualifies as a snoozer. It was definitely surprising a lot of people who'd watched him play in Edmonton that he had suddenly ascended to offensively productive top pairing defenseman status, but someone to keep on your watch list for as long as he continues getting these high-end minutes, playing with Duncan Keith. Good things can happen. As for Corey Crawford, Elon, I feel like it's not that you shouldn't trust the people on Twitter. I mean, I don't know who you got these updates from and who you're choosing to trust, but this seems like a very much a post-concussion situation, which I think is pretty hard to predict and might have changed day to day. Maybe news was just being leaked way sooner than it should have been. It would be really great for Chicago if he could come back. He's actually been the 5th most reliable fantasy goalie this year, or I guess just NHL goalie this year, with a quality start percentage that ranks him 5th in the league amongst starters. And yeah, he can't come back a day too soon for Chicago, but I still hope that they proceed with the appropriate caution.
Well, of course, we want Corey Crawford to have a long and continued long, successful career. It's already been a great career, but keep it going. Corey Crawford. The Hawks really need, though, to surround him with some good players, maybe go on another cup run. But obviously, one of those players is not Patrick Sharp. They signed him in the offseason. We mentioned on the last show that he was going to be playing on the Patrick Kane line going into the week. I think I gave an over-under of 1.5 games before he'd get bumped. Obviously, I was right. Patrick Sharp didn't last in the top 6. He's done for sure. So now the current lines for however long these will last, which is probably like a couple games themselves, but I'm kind of into them. They've been running with Kane, Schmaltz, and Brendan Saad, and then Taves with Duclair and DeBrincat. And so that seems like a lot of players now become worth watching. Like Brendan Saad, first of all, has been so disappointing all year, but maybe playing with Kane and Schmaltz is going to help. Then DeBrincat and Duclair potentially become potential second half improvement players if they could stick on line 1 with Taves and, get the associated line 1 minutes. DeBrincat had a hat trick in his last game, 3 goals and 1 assist on Thursday. Duclair had a goal and 2 assists. So both of them might be worth looking at if they're available in free agency. Obviously, DeBrincat over Duclair, in my opinion.
All of them are certainly worth watching if they're available in free agency. Saad, DeBrincat, Duclair, all of them have upside. We've talked about how Saad should be better than he has been so far this season. I still maintain that. I still think I'm really expecting a better second half than the first half. And by the way, we're saying first half and second half a lot, but more than the first half of the season is over. Just a very petty thing to point out. Totally a waste of everyone's time. I know what I'm saying next. As for Duclair and DeBrincat specifically, I wonder if they could be the best pair of regular line mates that Jonathan Toews has had since Marian Hossa and Brendan Saad back in 2014-15. Then again, maybe not. They're both pretty unknown entities, but all good deep adds now or shallower streaming considerations. If you're not adding them, you should at least be watching.
Yeah, I mean, that would be a strong thing to say. I'm pretty sure last year, who was Taves playing with last year? Oh man, I'm totally
I looked it up in advance to the show, but I didn't.
Okay, I'll just forget. Oh, I'm just gonna.
No, I'll tell you.
Okay, let me do my part again.
Okay.
Wow, big statement. Best line mates Jonathan Toews has played with are DeBrincat and Duclair. Who was he playing with last year? Even earlier this year, he was playing with Saad and DeBrincat. So I guess you think Duclair is an upgrade over Saad? Come on.
Well, last year, the thing is he's been mixed around so much. I'm hoping that maybe this sticks, although the way Chicago's worked this season, it's pretty unlikely. Last year's most common line mate was Richard Panik, and then sometimes the third piece was Patrick Kane. Sometimes it was Nick Schmaltz. Sometimes it was Hinostroza. And then the year before that, his most common line mates were Marian Hossa and Andrew Shaw. So I don't know. I don't think it's that outlandish to think if both these guys can play to their upside that they could. I would love to see. I think what I'm hoping is that they stick together for 10 games, find some chemistry, make something happen. But we should know better.
Sorry, one sec.
Perhaps we should know better.
Yes, well, yeah, obviously we'll have to wait a few weeks before we could even start talking about this as a permanent line, the way that Chicago's been going. But okay, we got to go to our next team, Colorado Avalanche. Brian, 2 straight losses for Jonathan Bernier after that incredible winning streak. He wasn't terrible in those 2 games, by the way. He had 3 goals against on 39 shots against Montreal and then 3 goals against on 34 shots at St. Louis. So if Varlamov comes back after the All-Star game, it becomes interesting, right? Like, I have Varlamov. Like, I've had him in our Keeping Karlsson Ultimate Patron Fantasy League Tier 2 Ottawa division. I've had him all year. He got injured, stashed him in IR, added Bernier. Obviously worked out very well for me. Bernier has helped. I was getting a little nervous, though. If Bernier was going to keep doing so well, and then Varlamov was going to come back from injury, then the way our rules are, we can't just keep people in IR because our lineup's locked. So I would have had to bring Varlamov back, but there was no guarantee that Bernier wasn't going to keep getting starts. And I was all nervous. Maybe now things are working out. Bernier's starting to struggle a little bit. So Varlamov will just come back and recover that #1 job? Or do you think that it's not going to be that simple and they're going to be trading starts for a while Colorado tries to figure out who's their better option moving forward?
I don't think it's going to be very clear cut once Varlamov comes back. I think a lot will depend how Varlamov plays when he re-enters the lineup. Colorado is in a very tight battle for a playoff spot, and they can't afford to have a goalie finding their legs right now. They're probably just going to want the guy they feel like they can most depend on in that given moment. And how can you think that that is going to be Semyon Varlamov for sure? He's been a low 1910s goalie over the last 3 seasons, including this one. He was at 914 2 years ago, 898 last year, 912 this year. I think he might have to earn his spot back, because if you look at just what's happened this year, Bernier has now started only 2 fewer games than Varlamov on the season, and he has a save percentage that is 7 points better at 919 compared to Varlamov's 912. So if you're asking me, they both played an equal amount of games. Bernier has been the better goalie. I wonder if he can hold on to the job. I think Varlamov is going to have to earn his spot back. So that's potential bad news for any Varlamov owners who didn't get Bernier yet, or who did get him and now may be forced to cuff the Avalanche by owning 2 goalies. And then, yeah, that's my take there. And I also wanted to mention, while we're talking about the Western playoff picture, can you believe that the Kings, the Wild, the Ducks, and Chicago are all on the outside looking in, would not qualify for the playoffs if the season ended today?
Wow, that's wild. There's going to be a lot of jockeying for position, I think, for the rest of the season. I'm not going to say for the second half of the season. What can I say? The second 3/5 or 2/5 of the season? Are we at that point?
The second 40%. I don't know. I haven't done the math. We'll call it the second half. We know what it means.
For this, let's make this the last episode that we'll just call it the second half, just to keep things easy. Brian, I'm going to accuse you of fear-mongering. I think that it's going to be fine. Don't worry. Varlamov's going to take over the starting job. Varlamov, he's a starting goalie on Colorado, not Jonathan Bernier. Come on. Hey, that's my opinion. We'll see.
Why?
Because he's been the starting goalie all year before he got injured.
He's been garbage.
He has not been garbage. He was really reliable for me. I'll bet you if you take that save percentage number and just look over, discount the first few games when all the goalies were being terrible. And then also, I think there was 1 game where he led in 10 goals or something. I'll bet you if you take out that other 1 game, Varlamov's been pretty good. But anyways, we'll see. I'm pretty sure I'm going to be right. So you can argue with me now, but we'll just find out in a couple weeks.
You don't need to say, I bet if. I'm going to do it. Okay, I see he had a 792 outing in his 12th game of the season in early November. He next played in late November, and yeah, he was a 920 over his last 14 games. So maybe you're onto something, but still, that's only 1 point better than Jonathan Bernier's full season save percentage. Elon, I'm very surprised that I'm the one suddenly lobbying for Jonathan Bernier. What's happened?
I don't know. I think that you're going a little crazy right now. I think it's been a few days without hockey and your brain isn't working right. How is Jonathan Bernier going to steal the job from Semyon Varlamov? It's not going to happen. Anyway, we talked about Tyson Barrie last week. We said he's likely going to return this week. Didn't happen, I guess. We were saying okay, get him back in your lineup. It's looking like he's going to play. I guess Colorado decided to be cautious with him. I think that Tyson Barrie is going to be back next week. Pretty sure. Anyway, sometime soon. Anyway, so he's obviously going to get back on the top power play. He's going to bump Sam Girard. Curious to know if Sam Girard maybe gets onto power play 2 or if Erik Johnson gets to keep his power play 2 spot. It probably doesn't matter. Either way, you probably want to hold Erik Johnson just because he's been doing so well at even strength and he gives you all those peripherals. And I think either way, you probably want to drop Sam Girard.
Well, if you're looking for the guy who has second power play unit time, I think it's going to be Girard. He was holding down that role while Barry was healthy, and that's my guess for what'll happen once he returns. I think he's the heir apparent to that top line power play unit quarterback. So I imagine they want to get him as many reps as possible. And then Eric Johnson doesn't get the power play time. But you're right. He still does a lot at even strength, plays a ton of minutes, helps you with peripherals, still a valuable fantasy own regardless.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure Eric Johnson has had more points than Sam Girard over this stretch while Barry's been injured, even though Girard's been the one on the top power play. But Girard has been good. A lot of assists and a lot on the power play. Okay, next team, Columbus Blue Jackets. Man, we're still in the C's? Oh my God. Okay, Cam Atkinson returned from his foot injury and scored a goal in the 2-1 win over Arizona on Thursday. He had 4 shots, 3 hits, 2 blocks. A great stat line for Cam Atkinson in his return. Okay, glass half empty. He's been on a line with Foligno and Wenberg. Man, that's like the disappointment line of the year, right? Cam Atkinson, Foligno, and Wenberg, all guys that people had high hopes for going into the season and have all been disappointing. Okay, glass half full. Man, what a great line of possible second half bounce back candidates. Cam Atkinson, Nick Foligno, Alex Wenberg. I feel like they could all improve in the second half. So, Brian, I'll be curious to know, how do you see it? Are they like glass half empty, great line that potentially is going to surprise people, or is this going to be the line that just continues to disappoint? By the way, Wenberg also had a great game. He had a power play goal and 1 assist. Foligno assisted on the Atkinson goal. All 3 of these guys looking good. Meanwhile, Pierre-Luc Dubois, pointless in 5 games now. If someone is holding Dubois while all 3 of Foligno, Wenberg, and Atkinson are available in free agency, are they snoozing a little bit? Should they be swapping to a better Columbus Blue Jacket forward option?
Cam Atkinson, I'm pretty glass half full on him. He's probably the only guy that I'd for sure rather have over Pierre-Luc Dubois, like the one guy who has the deepest reserves of patience from me based on what I've seen from him in the past. And of course, what he keeps doing shooting. He's the only one of Wenberg, and Foligno to have an actual good shots on goal rate. Foligno and Wenberg not taking shots in a way that'll help you if that's what you're looking for. I would like to see more from Wenberg and Foligno before getting back on board with them. If it's a shallower league, then you can probably just switch back and forth between all of these guys until, one of them drops off. Then you pick up the guy who's on his way up. Like, I wouldn't be holding on to Pierre-Luc Dubois with a death grip, thinking that 50 points is probably a nice expectation for Dubois to have the rest of the way. That's the pace he's been on all year, but also the pace that he's been on since getting this deployment bump just past the 20-game mark because of this recent slump in scoring. I'm not sure there's upside for a whole lot more than 50 for him yet in his career, which is why if you want to try taking a chance on Foligno or Wenberg, it's not a huge, I don't see it as a big high stakes drop. I would do it for Atkinson though. If you're still on the fence, I'd still be okay with holding Dubois instead of those guys.
Yeah, Dubois playing with Panarin. Oh my God, what is going on out there? 1 sec. I got like dishes clamoring out there. Or maybe it's fine now. Okay. Sorry about that. Okay, where was I?
Can I add something?
Sure.
Okay. And also to go back to Colorado, not to move backwards, but you said you're pretty sure that Johnson has more points since Barry's been out compared to Girard. We don't need to be pretty sure. We have numbers in front of us that we can reference. And I can tell you, you can say that with absolute certainty. He has 9 points in 13 games since Barry last played, and Girard has 7 points in 13 games since Barry last played. So both doing well, but of course, Girard has only 13 shots while Johnson has 34. That's a big difference.
Brian, you sound like my boss at work. He's always giving advice like, don't ask like what would happen if you put in this code. Just try it out yourself and see. You don't have to ask. You did a spot on impression right there. But okay. Anyway, stop triggering me. I'm still on the weekend. Okay. I'm talking about fantasy hockey here. Let's go to D. Dallas. Jason Spezza has 5 points in his last 5 games. He's been back on the top power play, or at least he was on Thursday after Brett Ritchie was given that spot the game before for some reason. I don't know what's with Dallas. Like, they played Brett Ritchie and Devin Shore on the top power play, but Spezza has been back there. He's also been on line 2 with Shore and Janmark. He's been like a huge disappointment this year. No one owns him at this point, I'm pretty sure. Do you have any expectations of Spezza to continue this nice run he's currently on and maybe improve his pace in the second half of the season? He had a 61-point pace just last season, so it's not that long ago that he was a really valuable guy in fantasy. Currently, he's well below even a half point per game. He only has 21 points in 49 games, even with this current run of 5 points in his last 5 games. So what do you think about Jason Spezza moving forward?
There's only one person who can help Jason Spezza produce better than he has in the first half of the season. And it's not Jason Spezza. It's not you or me. It's not you or me either, Elon. It's Ken Hitchcock. Spezza can still produce when he gets the minutes and the right deployment. But this year, he has not been given much of either by Hitchcock. Spezza is seeing third line minutes so far this year, like the worst of his career, with what looks like a hard cap of 14 minutes per game. And that leaves him 2 to 3 minutes short of ice time compared to the last few years on average. And his most common line mates this year, after having played with Ben and Sagan for chunks of the last couple seasons, Matthias Janmark, Devon Shore, and Remy Ali. I don't even care if I'm saying that right. It's not a line mate that Jason Spezza is going to be able to produce regularly with. So he's not being put in a position to succeed, which is sad because I think he's still got offense to give. I don't think he's terribly declined or maybe even at all. We're not seeing enough to know for sure. But what we are seeing in his limited minutes are offensive rate stats that are similar enough to the last couple years that it's reasonable to expect if he was getting the same minutes or legit minutes and legit deployment, he could do something with them. Unfortunately, no minutes, no line mates means no hope for Jason Spezza unless that changes.
Well, I did just start this whole thing by saying he's been on the top power play and he has 5 points his last 5 games.
Yeah, but he's still playing very few minutes, and we don't know if he's going to stay on that top power play, and his even strength line mates still aren't that great.
Yeah, well, okay. There's no one else for him to play with. If the top line is going to be Ben Sagan and Radulov, who else can they put him with? But anyway, we'll have to see. Like Adam Cheer watch list at this point. I think at this point, he's someone I've got my eye on if he's going to stay on that top power play, because those are some really good players he's playing with. We don't have time to get into John Klingberg, but man, what a season he's having. Okay, Brian, next, D, Detroit. I know you must be loving this after I've done my fair share of teasing you for saying Peter Mrazek is good while he continues to be terrible. He's finally started to go on a nice run. In his last 4 games, he had 2 shutouts over Chicago and New Jersey. Then he took a tough 3-2 overtime loss to Philly on Tuesday. And then he relieved Jimmy Howard 11 minutes into the game yesterday versus Chicago and stopped 17 of 18 shots. And meanwhile, Jimmy Howard, he's been really weak lately. He has 4 straight sub 900 save percentage games currently. And, he let him 3 goals on 9 shots Thursday before getting pulled. Do you think at this point, are we looking at a turning point and Mrazek is going to steal the job from Jimmy Howard moving forward? Or is this just another like Khudobin, Rask situation or many of the others we've talked about throughout this season where, whatever, after the break, they're still going to give Howard the net and he's still going to continue to be good and Peter Mrazek will continue to be Peter Mrazek. Of course, there's also potential trade speculation for Mrazek, just like I mentioned for Evander Kane, but I guess you don't really want to get into that. But I know that Mrazek could be traded. Anyways, what's your take right now on Mrazek? If he's available in free agency, should people be rushing to add him while he's on this great run?
I'm still trying to figure out how I've been teased over the last couple of years for both being too low and then too high on him. But here we are. I also don't know that we have an actual goalie situation in Detroit just yet. I don't know if that pendulum is full on swinging, but there's at least maybe some momentum starting. Though what the Red Wings actually want with Mrazek in the future is anyone's guess, Elon. And this is where, I can see why you're thinking, well, if he gets traded, is he being showcased or do they even care how much he plays in the future? He's a restricted free agent at the end of this year. And the Wings probably shouldn't be looking to re-sign Mrazek for another $4 million, which is what he's currently making, considering that they're up against the cap, need to pay Jimmy Howard $5 million for one more season, which is crazy. Mike Green, $6 million is coming off the books. That'll help. But still, $10 million in goalies for a bottom team, silly. Not a good way to use your money. Anyway, I think Jimmy Howard is still the guy in Detroit for now, but his owners should be looking over their shoulders to make sure that they're ready if some of Howard's starts begin to disappear. I still don't have a ton of faith in Mrazek. Even if he does get consistent starts, I don't know that he'll be consistently good in them. So this is more of just a warning for anybody who owns Howard or a heads up for anybody who is desperately looking for goalie starts.
Yeah, definitely someone to watch. I mean, hard to say if Peter Mrazek will steal the job, but he's at least looking good in the short term. And you know what's really good when you're looking in the short term for these players? It's to play daily fantasy, because that way you could just play Mrazek on Tuesday, see how he does. So why don't we give a shout out to our second sponsor for this week's episode, which are our friends over at FanDuel, because with FanDuel, you could play daily fantasy hockey any day. There's a bunch of contests out there. You can play whenever you want. Like, there's something for everyone. Lots of contests to choose from. Starting at $1, you just pick a contest. You choose your team. You got a budget. You pick the players you want to play just for that day. And then you watch your score in real time. It's a ton of fun. Brian, every time we do one of these FanDuel spots, we then have a FanDuel listener league. Last week we didn't have one, but me and the patrons, we still played a FanDuel contest. And I was doing so well most of the way. I loaded up on like Pittsburgh guys. I got Sheary against Carolina, and he got a point. I had Casey DeSmith. It was a brilliant pick, but then unfortunately, the top you think you have the sure things. Then like Alex Barkov didn't do anything. It was a 6-1 loss to Dallas. I should have taken the Dallas guys and not the Florida guys. Oh well, the winner had Eichel and McKinnon. It was great. Congrats to S Beverly 23. Hopefully that person's a patron, or if not, I guess we. Anyways, all that to say, FanDuel is a lot of fun. You pick your team, you watch it, like I said, and we have our listener league going this Tuesday. So you can sign up on Tuesday. Go to FanDuel.com/Karl, Karl, and join our league this Tuesday. And you can compete with Brian and I, and you could hear me whine about how I lost to you.
I mean, you still not. I don't know what to say. I'll just repeat it. Yeah, ideally, that's exactly what you'll be hearing. You can head over to FanDuel.com/Karl to join us. I'm just saying what you. Okay, let me try again. I sure hope that's what's going to happen. If I win, that's all that matters. And I finished top 5 in the last one of these contests that we did. If you want to try and beat me, feel good about yourself. You would deserve to if you beat me. You can head over to FanDuel.com/Karl. Join us starting Tuesday morning. Get your spot because there are limited ones available.
Okay, Brian, let's go to the Edmonton Oilers. They have another team. Okay, Brian, let's go to the Edmonton Oilers. Here's another player that I think could be a good discount on FanDuel right now. Let's look at Oscar Klefbom. He got back on the top power play. So we were concerned about Darnell Nurse taking the top power play job. Looks like they're still trying to figure things out. He got back on the top power play in Thursday's 4-3 OT win over Calgary for what it's worth. By the way, Brian, oh yeah, it was Rittich in net, not Smith. I was about to say like, oh, I thought you said Smith is so reliable, but you're right. He is. They played the wrong goalie, clearly. But anyways, Edmonton won a game against Calgary, and Oscar Klefbom was back on the top power play. That's my fantasy take from the Oilers. He had no points, of course, because he rarely does get points lately for some reason, but he had 4 shots. He was +2. He had big minutes. He had the second most minutes on the team, aside from Connor McDavid. So call me a glutton for punishment, but I think that I'm going to call Oscar Klefbom as another of my second half bounce back candidates that I have some faith in. Am I crazy, Brian? Like, I think if he was a free agency and I think if he was a free agency in any of my leagues, I'd probably be grabbing him. Would you?
Let's see. My bottom defenseman, I'm going to use Micah Cup full team, for example, is Patrick Nemeth. So, yeah, I'd probably give it a go because Klefbom, like I have Nemeth for blocks and Klefbom gets a bunch of those even when he's not scoring. Look, I mean, I know we've been singing the same tune about Oscar Klefbom for like the entire season, but the fact remains he's a top 10 defenseman in shot rates, top 15 in block rates, and he's still getting turns on the top power play, which, God willing, will get some kind of facelift in the second half that could benefit every Oiler on it. I would prefer Oscar Klefbom's upside to anyone hedging on replacement value for their bottom roster players. So in the couple, that's usually 45, 50 point forward or 30, 35 point defenseman. And yeah, it's really funny how little this answer has changed about Oscar Klefbom over the course of the year as patience has waxed and waned, but hope has always remained.
Yeah, we'll continue to have hope for Klefbom. Like you say, yeah, I like how he keeps taking shots. I don't know. Anyway, let's not even get into the even strength line combinations on Edmonton because what's the point? They change every episode. Last week, it was, or at least on Thursday, Kajula, Camilleri. They both spent time with McDavid and Draisaitl on the top line last game. So it was McDavid, Draisaitl, and then one of those other two throughout the game. I'm sure we'll have different names for next week, but who knows? Take a look at Kajula and Camilleri, maybe in daily fantasy if you see one of them is on the top line with McDavid and Dre going into Tuesday's games. Okay, Florida Panthers. Next team, James Reimer suffered a groin injury on Tuesday, slated to miss at least 2 weeks. We already reported last week that Roberto Luongo could return at the start of February, so this is all the more reason to go and jump on Roberto Luongo if he's available to you in free agency, because now Reimer's not going to be there to challenge him. But in the meantime, while they're both out, I guess we're looking at Harry Sateri as the starter for at least the short term for the Florida Panthers. He was okay on Thursday versus Washington. He stopped 4 of 46 shots. That's like a .913 save percentage, which is pretty much exactly league average, but I really don't expect Harry Sateri to be able to put up even league average numbers. I'd be very afraid to add him in any of my leagues if anything is counted aside from just like wins and saves. What about you? Like, what are your thoughts on Harry Sateri? I feel like if he was playing against New Jersey without Taylor Hall, maybe then I'd be comfortable with Harry Sateri. But aside from that, I don't know. I think that he might get blown up next week.
I would also be pretty scared to start Sateri. I would consider him... Sorry. I would be pretty scared as well to start Harry Sateri. I had considered him as an alternative to Anton Forsberg this week, seeing as Sateri had the extra game, but I just don't think he's going to offer much more opportunity to get wins, even though he does have that extra game. Florida has plenty of their own problems outside of the crease. Adding a new goalie who has underperformed his expected save percentage by 40 points in brief NHL action so far, and also was a 906 in 12 games of action for AHL Springfield before was a 906 in 12 games of action for AHL Springfield before getting called up. I'm not chomping at the bit. I'm not chomping at the bit for that, which is what Harry Sateri provides until, well, he shows us that he can provide more.
Yeah, and like I said, maybe Luongo will be back soon. Reports were coming out that he could be back early February. Also on Florida, interesting line shakeup on Thursday's game. Coach Bob Bugner decided to move Jonathan Huberdeau to the second line with Malgin and Trocheck and move Nick Bjugstad to line one with Barkov and Dadonov. So this seems like great news for Dennis Malgin, who scored 2 goals, by the way, with his new superstar line mates. Like I said, he's playing now with Jonathan Huberdeau and Vincent Trocheck, 2 really amazing players. Great spot for Malgin. Also great spot for Bjugstad, playing with Dadonov and Barkov. He was pointless in Thursday's game, but Bjugstad had 6 shots on goal, which is great. So, Brian, seems like both could be worthwhile if these lines hold. If these lines do hold, who would you rather have right now between Dennis Malgin and Nick Bjugstad for next week?
Honestly, first off, it's kind of nice that these lines in Florida have come about. There are 2 new fantasy relevant options suddenly created because of the shift. And before I even talk about them, Milan, which combo would you rather have a guy playing with, Huberdeau and Trocheck or Barkov and Dadonov?
I think I'd have to say Huberdeau and Trocheck. I don't know. Hard to say because we don't know that much about Dadonov. Like, I've always liked Dadonov because he was playing with Barkov and Huberdeau, and I know he had great success in the KHL, but it seems like Huberdeau and Trocheck is the safer pick, even though Barkov's really great.
Yeah, it's a very tough call. So that's why I think it's great that at least 2 guys have pretty equal opportunities to score all of a sudden. But I am going to go as my first choice between Bjugstad and Malgin. I'm going Bjugstad because I am a sucker for a good shot attempt rate. And Bjugstad sits second on the team in that category. He's also the only Panther forward, aside from those 4 top flight guys, who's cracked 500 minutes. This season. Malgin is actually dead last in shot attempt rates on the Panthers. Malgin is actually dead last in shot attempt rates amongst Panthers forwards, while he owns a shooting percentage twice as high as the next best shooting percentage on the team. Jonathan Huberdeau has like 11 or 12%. Malgin is up at 22% thanks to his multi-goal game that he had recently. But the conclusion is both could be good. Great guys to try out if you're looking to bring in some fresh blood to your forward group.
Yeah, I guess we stopped keeping track of who we'd want more than other people, but I imagine these guys are both in the same category as like Kasha and Henrique, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, Bjugstad has only had that 6-shot game, so we'll see if it lasts for another game or 2, if he still has that opportunity. If he does, I probably like him more than Henrique, and maybe Kasha too. It's close, right around there.
Yeah, you got to look at schedules sometimes to help make these decisions. Okay, Los Angeles Kings. How many teams are we through now? Like 10? And it's past 9 o'clock, so we're doing great. Jonathan Quick is going to be suspended for Tuesday's game due to skipping the All-Star game. Apparently, he wants to rest some nagging issues. My question is, why is he playing so often? If he has nagging issues, why don't they just rest him? Like, they have a decent backup goalie. Like, Darcy Kemper has been really good lately. Like, why isn't the coach of the LA Kings a Kumper Thumper, as patron Dave would say? Like, he's great. Like, Darcy Kemper's having a low-key great year. He deserves some due. He has a .934 save percentage in 13 games so far. Like, obviously, he showed us that he might struggle as a starting goalie in the league back when he was on Minnesota, but he's doing fine. Like, maybe Jonathan Quick should sit more often. So, not only sit the All-Star game, maybe don't play like 4 games in a week like he did a couple weeks ago.
He was really a workhorse, one of the biggest workhorses of the NHL season so far. Darcy Kemper, poor Darcy Kemper, he had ridden Pine for over a month without seeing game action, and he was healthy for that month, by the way, before he finally got between the pipes 3 times over the week leading up to the All-Star break. And Kemper, you feel like he plays for LA and he's had a good season so far, but for me, he's always been a very scary spot start. I'm still not into him that much because of it, even though I know it's irrational. Like, I have a bit of a Kemper phobia. I was scarred years ago in the years where the Minnesota Wild were trying to move on from Nicholas Backstrom and Josh Harding. Keep in mind that Darcy Kemper is still a career .913 goalie, and I wouldn't expect much better from him on any given night. But, I mean, on any given night, he could also be a .930 goalie, especially with a pretty good team that is pretty defensive, that is pretty solid defensively in front of him. Start him at your own peril, but he probably beats, I don't know, a Ken Appleby and definitely a Harry Sateri.
Yeah, I don't know, Brian. Like, I think it's very different being a backup goalie and being a starting goalie. I think Kemper, if he came in once every couple of weeks at least, I'm sure he'd continue to be fine. Maybe not like a .930 or whatever, but I think he could be at least league average. Anyway, okay, Minnesota, Kemper's former team. Brian, can people safely drop Zach Parise at this point? Are his days of being fantasy relevant over? Is he now just another Camilleri or a Gaborik? I mean, so Parise now has 3 points in 10 games so far since he came back from his injury. 24 shots in those 10 games, which is okay, but, you know, like, not amazing, though he has had a lot of 3-shot-a-goal games and then just a couple ones sprinkled in there. It's obviously still a very small sample size of just 10 games. But still, on the plus side, he's been playing with Eric Stahl, both even strength and on the power play, and Stahl has been just fine. Like, Stahl has 6 points in his last 4 games. So is this maybe just an IPP issue for Zach Parise, where he's on the ice for a lot of goals and just, you know, for whatever reason, he's not getting points on them? Or is there more to the story? Would you still be holding on to Zach Parise if you had him?
I did have him, and I've already dropped him. Look, Parise is good for some shots, but that's about all you can hope for. Before we were saying, well, he'll get you some shots and maybe some points, but he's not putting up points at a strong enough pace to like think that that's going to be what you're going to get out of him. His offensive rate stats and expected goals are in decline across the board, and Parise's shot attempt share has been really, really bad. Presently, he's got an individual number that's 11% lower than his team's average, which is very, very, very bad. You might know that number as Corsi relative. As Corsi for relative percentage or shot attempts percentage relative. It essentially means, yeah, it's a difference between how you're performing versus the rest of your team on average. And he is performing much, much worse, gobsmackingly worse so far than the rest of his team. Maybe he's still finding his legs. And yeah, you're onto the IPP thing. Parise's is kind of low, but I really don't think that we should be holding out a whole lot of hope based on that one thing, given all the other poor indicators that Parise is showing right now. So like I said, I dropped him myself. I think you're good to do the same in most other leagues. Could be good for his stream. If Minnesota's playing, you need a game for... Sorry. You need an extra game. He could be one of the better options on a regular basis to try and stream it and get a point from, especially while he's still playing with Eric Stahl.
Yeah, okay. So it's interesting because I kind of see him and Evander Kane as pretty similar, like high shot guys that, you know, need to be in a good spot. Maybe, I don't know, Parise's probably obviously had a much better career than Evander Kane so far, but at this point it sounded like you said hold on to Evander Kane, but you let go of Zach Parise. So there we go. Patty in the chat room here just said who won the Royal Rumble. I guess I won't say it on the show. That might be a spoiler for people who are maybe recording it, but I didn't realize it was today. There you go. It's someone I've never heard of. So I guess I need to start following WWE a little bit more closely.
And now I remember it was who my friend predicted. So good for him.
All right.
Go, Aaron.
Okay. Good job. Aaron, the patron?
Yeah.
Oh, thanks, Aaron. Okay. Let's go to Nashville now. Oh, wait, no. Let's go to Montreal. I almost get, you know, it would be typical for me to skip Montreal. At least it would be fitting because they've been pretty bad this year. But actually, one guy has been hot, and that is Jonathan Drouin. He has 8 points in his last 8 games. 5 of those on the power play. He's been playing at even strength with Galchenyuk and Delorier. And, you know, going into the season, many projections, including Dauber, had Jonathan Drouin at like 60-plus points on the year. Even with this great streak of 8 points in his last 8 games, he still only has 26 points in 44 games, which is only a 48-point pace. Brian, do you think that Jonathan Drouin can put up a 60-point pace at least for the rest of the season if he doesn't actually hit 60 points overall? Like, it's probably pretty unlikely that he could hit 60 overall right now. He'd probably have to be on closer to a 70-point pace. But what do you think about Jonathan Drouin moving forward? Is he going to continue this hot run, or is it fleeting?
I am much more comfortable. Like we said, just like Brandon Saad, we've compared the two, saying that Jonathan Drouin deserves better in the second half than he got in the first. And that means I'm comfortable with him being at like a 55 to 60 point pace. We've already explained why we think he should outperform his first half. My very optimistic self would still have him at a 60-point pace and not much higher. That comes out to about 26 or 27 points over the last 35 games of the year, though, which is very valuable. If he happens to be in free agency, you're looking to throw a Hail Mary. If you're the kind of person who's added Matt Matt Duchene at several points during his cold runs. This could be a good time to add Jonathan Drouin.
Yeah, like obviously it's unlikely that Druin's in free agency in a lot of leagues. If he is, definitely now's the time to add him. Like, why not? Like, who are you waiting for to add from free agency, right? Though if you're in a hits league, maybe take a look at this Nicholas Deslauriers, who, like I said, is on the Drouin line with Galchenyuk, consistently putting up 5+ hits most night. He even had 7 hits and 8 hits in his last 2 games. Plus, he's on a line where there's potential for points. Like if you're playing with Drouin and Galchenyuk and they're both doing well, that's pretty good. And you're getting guaranteed hits. Definitely Nicholas Deslauriers should not be in free agency in a hit league, I would think. Okay, Nashville, we're on to N. It's almost halfway through the alphabet. I'm not sure if we're halfway through the teams or not, but Nashville, Philip Forsberg has been practicing, should be back soon. Victor Arvidsson has heated up lately. Same with Ryan Johansson. He's put up an assist in each of his last 2 games. They've been playing with Pontus Åberg on the top line, so I'm assuming he'll be bumped for Philip Forsberg when he comes back, and hopefully we'll see that great top line from last year of Forsberg, Johansson, and Arvidsson. And I feel like both of those guys, by the way, Johansson and Arvidsson, they're both currently behind their point paces from last year. So I'm going to add them to my list of good candidates for second half improvements, especially once Forsberg comes back. Do you concur?
Yes, I do concur. I think both Arvidsson and Ryan Johansson are going to do better in the second half. I have more confidence in Arvidsson than Ryjo, who has seen a decline in shot rates at both even strength and on the power play. And although that wasn't really his bread and butter during a 60-point season last year, like we weren't like wowed by his shot totals. That's not why we liked him. It's had a negative impact on his expected goals for in both sets of situations. Arvidsson, meanwhile, has more or less kept up what he's done last year, though on a less monstrous and more reasonable, sustainable scale. Both could see the nice kind of regression in their IPP and on-ice shooting percentage as well.
Yeah, and then you have a guy like Craig Smith. I expect him to be bumped from the top power play when Forsberg comes back. They've been going with 2D lately on the top unit, so I feel like guys like Smith, Turris, like Scott Hartnell, Kevin Fiala, all not doing much lately. Though, okay, Fiala had 2 goals against Florida a few games ago. But aside from that, none of these guys are doing much. I think we're at a point where basically you're looking at Forsberg, Arvidsson, and Johansson as the only forwards worth owning on Nashville in most forwards at this point. Do you concur with that?
I do. There's no other Predator begging to be owned, really. Like, Craig Smith was making himself useful with shots on goal, even without points, but he has only 4 shots in his last 3 games, and that means it's time to start eyeballing replacements.
Okay, let's go to the New Jersey Devils. A lot of injury trouble for them. Taylor Hall, Corey Schneider, Marcus Johansson, all injured last week. The Devils have lost 4 in a row now, and they've only scored 3 goals total in those 4 games. So, Brian, I've got an out there theory for you, but I have a hunch. Like, okay, stick with me here, and everyone in the chat room, bear with me. I think that the New Jersey Devils are not that good at scoring goals without Taylor Hall. It's just a hunch I have. I don't know if that's too crazy, but Brian, do you think that's accurate? Like, okay, but seriously, they've sucked, okay, since Taylor Hall's been injured. Luckily, Hall's hand injury isn't serious, and he should be back next week. And my real question to you is there any chance we're going to see Hall reunited with Hischier and Palmieri at even strength and on the power play sometime soon? Like, that would be so nice, right? Hischier has only 1 assist in his last 4 games. Palmieri's been pointless in 5. They're both looking mighty snoozery lately, but I feel like maybe I'd hold on to them just to hope for some better deployment. Like, Hall might come back, and then, they're going to want to shake things up considering they haven't been scoring any goals lately. Like, that was the first line for a while. Everything was fine. Why has it changed?
Well, first off, I think your hunch might be correct that Taylor Hall, as I like to say, is the straw that stirs the drink in New Jersey. He's the reason that they can put up as many goals as they have, the centerpiece of that offense. It can't be understated. Sorry, just a sec. Understated his importance to that offense. So yeah, you should expect if he stays out for a while, it's going to be a little harder to get points unless All-Star Brian Boyle can really step up his game. The other thing with Taylor Hall, by the way, is that his injury is to his hand, and he didn't come back as quickly as the Devils had initially hoped, which isn't a great thing for a scorer like him to have to be playing through. So I'm hoping he can come back and be just as effective as before. As for what to do with the Palmieris and Hischiers of the world, I would try to hold on to them. If you have room to spare in your standings and you can survive another week of them doing very little for you, I would hold to wait and see what happens. I have no idea why they're not playing on the top unit together or if they will again, but I think it's worth holding just in case they do.
Yeah, well, they actually both were on the top unit in their last game with Jesper Bratt, but it's like, whatever. If Taylor Hall's not there, I don't want anybody. But Hall's going to be back next week. I'm pretty sure. I'd like to see Palmieri back with him. He's like someone I have in a couple of my leagues, and I feel like I'm really disappointed. I think it's not his fault. He's a good player. He's got to be put in a good situation. Anyways, regarding goaltending on the Devils, like I said, Schneider has a groin injury. Kincaid is actually on IR. So, okay, let's say Taylor Hall comes back and the Devils start scoring again. Like they're not just like a terrible team. Do you have any interest in Ken Appleby while he's the starter? Does he have any kind of pedigree? Do you know anything about him? I think I brought him up last week and said, like, hopefully we don't even have to ever talk about him. But I guess we might have to talk about him.
I have a little bit of interest in Ken Appleby as a starter, but he has no pedigree to speak of. Undrafted 22-year-old from North Bay. He did lead Oshawa to a Memorial Cup championship in 2014-15, and since then has done pretty well in the ECHL over the last couple of years, but not in the AHL. 888 so far this year in 16 appearances for Binghamton. Appleby's play so far means that I'm keeping an open mind. By the way, Elon, do you know who the Devils haven't called up with their first and second stringers out?
Tell me.
Eddie Lack remains in the AHL. They've called up Appleby. They've called up Mackenzie Blackwood. Eddie Lack getting his reps in the minors.
Yeah, he's working it out. Eddie Lack's going to be a star in the league one day. I know you're holding on to that hope, Brian. But yeah, I think he's done. And we'll have to see. Like, the Devils were looking really good back when everyone was healthy. So we'll see if they could bounce back. And we'll see if Ken Appleby has any value, at least once Hall is back. Okay, let's go to the New York Islanders. Pretty sure we said to grab Beauvillier on last week's episode. I hope we did, because he had a great week. He had 2 straight 2-goal games and then a 1-assist game at Vegas on Thursday. Should we upgrade him now from, like, probably you should add him to, like, he's must own, you're crazy if Beauvillier is still in your free agency at this point? Or do you have any reservations about maybe him getting bumped if and when Andrew Ladd comes back and him not getting, so first of all, like, he's been playing on line 2 with Barzal and Eberle, and then also he's not on the top power play. So I guess that's the reasons to maybe not jump on Beauvillier, but he's been so hot lately.
Yeah, and we did say, well, first you said we should pick him up, and I'm like, probably. And then we upgraded that to, yeah, you should definitely pick him up. And now, like, you probably really definitely should pick him up if he's available in your league. He's crushing it in the spot where he is. Beauvillier is playing with Eberle, Barzal, like you said, and that's a really good place to be. And that could be like a first line on some teams, like maybe in Edmonton. Jordan Eberle, by the way, let's just, before we move on to the next team, he's been outstanding this year, right back into a mid-60s point pace. Eberle, of course, has had some help getting there with a high on-ice shooting percentage thanks to a certain line mate of his with the initials MB, but that has helped offset him having a smaller power play role that he's had in past successful seasons. I'm just really pleased with Eberle's bounce back, which, by the way, I'm pretty sure we told people was coming, even with some regression. I think Eberle's got a great shot at 60 points by the end of the year. So hooray for Eberle.
Hooray for Eberle. When you said the player with the initials MB, for some reason in my head, I jumped right to Mike Birbiglia. I guess that's where my head is at right now.
Wow. I thought at least like Marty Brodeur was coming, or Martin Biron. What other NHLers MB?
Oh, tweeted us at Keeping Karlsson with your favorite MB hockey player or not. Mike Birbiglia, by the way, not a hockey player, but it's pretty funny comedian. Okay, New York Rangers. Reports have come out that the Rangers are going to be sellers at the trade deadline. So, Brian, you're going to hate this fantasy hockey take on the Rangers. It's all about the trade deadline. Okay, the article I saw on The Score said Zuccarello, Nash, and McDonough could all get moved. I'd imagine Nash is the most likely to get traded since he's going to be I'd imagine Nash is the one that's most likely to get traded since he's going to be an unrestricted free agent this summer. I actually recently added him into Cupful. I got his 2-goal, 7-shot game on Tuesday against Anaheim. I was really happy about that. Nothing on Thursday in the 6-5 win over San Jose. Actually, it was the Miller-Hayes-Zuccarello line that got in on most of the action. Then McDonough got a lot of points as well. Nothing from Zibanejad and Nash. But whatever. Nash has been good. Do you expect a Nash move if he's moved? Or maybe you're to say, I don't want to speculate and we'll just move on. But I'm curious, like, do we expect a Nash move to be good or bad for him? Like, are you treating him any differently now that you've heard that he's likely going to be on the move? Or are you still thinking of him as like, because anyways, he's good now, right? He's on the top line, top power play on the Rangers. Curious to know if you think of him any differently or if you're just like, enjoy Rick Nash while he's in that spot and doing well.
Yeah, exactly. We didn't even know he'd be in this role with the New York Rangers. So I don't know if he moves what exactly he's asked to do with his new team, as exactly what he's asked to do with his new team.
Okay, then also, if the Rangers are going to get blown up and trade away all their good players, maybe owners of guys like Zibanejad and Henrik Lundqvist should be nervous because that's going to make it harder for them to be good. Like Zibanejad not having his great line mates and power play line mates, and Lundqvist having a worse team in front of him, making it harder to get wins. Scary stuff.
Scary, but I would say both those guys are talented enough to reasonably hold their own regardless of what happens around them. Of course, it wouldn't be optimal for Zibanejad or Lundqvist for a fire sale to happen around them, but I expect them to still be relevant and survive on your fantasy roster.
Okay, by the way, in the chat here, Ryan has suggested both Matthew Barnaby and Murray Barron as MBs, so don't tweet those to us. We already got those. Good ones, Ryan. Okay, let's go to the Ottawa Senators. Brian, your favorite team, the Ottawa Senators. Not much offense, though, coming from your favorite team right now. Can't help that Mark Stone has been out with a knee injury. Hopefully, he'll be returning soon. It might even be back right after the All-Star break. Is it still worth, at this point, holding guys like Duchesne, who, by the way, he had a short burst of production a couple weeks ago, but now he only has 2 points in his last 5 games? Or like Mike Hoffman, who we've been saying to hold on to all year. He only has 2 points in his last 8 games, both goals. At what point do these guys become snoozers, or do you like hold on, like especially Hoffman, do you just like hold on to him all year just because of all he's done over the past couple of years, or at some point are you going to recommend to let him go? And Brian, am I okay? Well, I'll just ask all my Ottawa questions. I'm curious to know, am I a bad person because I'm kind of starting to want Erik Karlsson to get traded? Like, I'm sorry, but like I just feel like he could do so much better on a better team, and like I own him in one league. Like I said at the top of the show, I think he'd be better if he could get traded. So I don't know. Those rumors at first were kind of annoying, but now I'm like, maybe it would be the worst thing. Like Karlsson just has 1 goal in his last 7 games. Curious to know, assuming he stays in Ottawa, which I'm sure he will, how confident are you that he'll be able to put up, say, like at least a 60-point pace moving forward for the rest of the season?
Okay, let's go back to Matt Duchesne. You mentioned he has only 2 points in his last 5, but if you look at it another way, he's a point-per-game player over his last 9. Matt Duchesne has pointed in 6 of his last 9 games to get there. So it's nice to see that he is doing stuff even when the rest of his team isn't. But I do get, like, over the last 5 games, has not been impressive. I think I'm hanging on just because of what we've seen in the last 2 weeks from him. I'm ready to give him a longer lease than maybe you are. So I'd hold him for now. And same with Hoffman, who still gives you top 50 shot rates amongst forwards in the NHL. If that's worth something to you, if that's worth something to you. In a points-only league, though, I might feel more inclined to let Mike Hoffman go. He's just not getting, like, the line mates he's playing with are garbage sometimes. Like Tom Pyatt, Gabriel Dumont, he's finding himself in weird situations too often, and I don't like it. Even though, like I said, he's kept up his shot rates pretty well. His shooting percentage isn't so far off. IPP on his shooting percentage, all relatively stable, but somehow he's only on pace for 51 points. I feel like he could probably do a little bit better, but maybe not a bet to get as close to 60. Well, he was 60 points last year. I don't know if he can get there this year. As for Erik Karlsson, look, I think he'll be fine. Obviously, he bounced back so strong from his previous scoring slump, but I agree that if the Sens aren't going to love him, perhaps it's time for them to let him go for the benefit of all of our joy and entertainment.
Yeah, let him go, or I don't know, do something. But yeah, Erik Karlsson. Okay, you're never gonna say that you're worried about Erik Karlsson. How about I'll stop asking you about him? But like, it's up to you, Brian, to let me know if at some point you're gonna tell people that they need to maybe try to trade or like do something with Erik Karlsson in their fantasy leagues, of course.
We did talk about that when he had, how long was it? Like a 13-game stretch where he was just terrible. And we said, you know, if you're feeling antsy about it, feeling icky about it, that's the time that you could trade him. And then if you did, you're probably pretty unhappy for the next few weeks, but now you're probably feeling okay about yourself now. It could be an up and down season the rest of the way if the Sens can't figure their stuff out, which it sure seems like they can't.
Okay, well, I asked you specifically, do you think he's going to put up a 60-point pace moving forward? Yes or no?
Yes.
All right, so we'll see. Because we had a question actually on our, I think it was on Facebook, like Tyson, it was like a trade where it was like Tyson Barrie for Karlsson, and then a really nice upgrade of a forward on the other piece. Like I think Barzal for, I don't remember exactly what it was, but it was like, I was thinking to myself, like, I mean, how much better is Karlsson even going to be than Tyson Barrie? Like Tyson Barrie's going to come back on the top power play with McKinnon and Rantanen, who are on fire. So like, I think Karlsson will be better, maybe not that much better. I don't know. Okay. Anyway, something to think about, but okay. Good to know that you still see Karlsson as 60+ point guy. Obviously hard to bet against Erik Karlsson. By the way, the Sens claim Magnus Pajjarvi off waivers from St. Louis. I can't imagine there's any reason to expect him to have any fantasy relevance, but gotta throw it in the show for completion's sake. I see from your nodding that you agree that he's useless, so we can just move on. Philadelphia, we're on to the Peas. Brian Elliott, day-to-day with a lower body injury. Michael Neuwirth had been on a great run over his last 3 starts, but then he got hammered for 5 goals against versus Tampa on Thursday. Overall, Neuwirth has a respectable .918 save percentage in 14 games on the season. So if the Elliott injury is serious, I feel like people should probably go and jump on Mikhail Neuwirth, right? And like, okay, so here's my question then. Let's say Gibson and Elliott both turn out to be out for a while. We talked earlier how Gibson's injured, and say Crawford stays out for a bit also. How would you rank your interest in owning the following guys? Neuwirth, Ryan Miller, and Anton Forsberg.
Okay, I guess I'll start with the ranking. I'll go Ryan Miller, Forsberg, and Neuwirth. How would you rank them?
Oh, wow. Really low on Neuwirth. I would have probably had Neuwirth first, to be honest.
Yeah, so here's what I have to say about the Philly goaltending situation. Even if Elliott comes back soon and is able to play, I don't know that he does. It's kind of possible that Neuwirth is making a run at the #1 job. Brian Elliott has posted a .908 so far this year, posted a .910 last year. So this could be about who Brian Elliott is. The one thing he does have going for him is that he's done better than you would expect a replacement level NHL goalie to do in his position. He's outplayed his expected save percentage by a slim margin, but he's still outplayed it. So what this means is, though, even though his save percentage is below league average, which is .913 and he's a .908, the Flyers aren't playing well enough to protect him well enough so that he could even put up a league average save percentage. He's outplaying what the Flyers would offer your average goaltender, and so he deserves some kind of credit for that. As for Michael Neuwirth, the thing with him is he's rarely played consistently enough to deserve a #1 job, but I figure he's at least earned his way back into a timeshare or hot hand consideration even when Brian Elliott returns. I guess, maybe I'll bump him ahead of Forsberg. I think it just shows who I expect to get the most wins. Like, even if Neuwirth plays a bunch for Philly, I expect more wins. I know Philadelphia's been on fire. They've won 8 of their last 10, but I have a little more faith in the Ducks and Miller. I'll bump him ahead of Forsberg.
Okay, we'll see. I got Neuwirth. I think that he should be owned. I would grab Neuwirth while Elliott is out anyways, because also Neuwirth was starting to get more starts even with Elliott healthy. So anyway, okay, also on Philly, we got to mention Travis Konechny. He scored in 4 straight games now. A couple of those were overtime goals, for whatever that's worth. That kind of makes me a little less interested, because kind of like, how often is he going to get the opportunity to score in overtime? Clearly, he's good in that spot at 3-on-3. Also, Konechny's taken 14 shots over those last 4 games where he scored a goal in each game, so he's doing great. Kind of seems like another Beauvillier situation to me, playing on a great line at even strength, only getting second unit power play time, but on fire right now. Who do you like between Konechny and Beauvillier if both of them are in free agency? I really like both of them right now. By the way, Konechny plays on Wednesday this week, so I was saying that the schedule is a bit tough next week. A lot of players only playing Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday, so even, like, I might even just grab Konechny for Wednesday, even if you don't have room for him on your roster for the rest of the week.
Yeah, I would say Konechny is a must-own. Did you ask me about Beauvillier? Sorry.
Yeah, I said Konechny versus Beauvillier.
I will take Konechny. Konechny also a must-own. I would say a muster-own because he's on the first line rather than the second, and I don't know, it feels like he's going to stay there. Of course, we're looking over our shoulders to see if Ladd replaces Beauvillier, although I don't think that's going to happen if this line is clicking. I'll go Konechny by a slim margin, though.
Okay, yeah, he's a good spot. Also, Konechny's someone that we were looking at the start of the year as potentially, like last year for his rookie season, a lot of people were predicting that he would be really good. He has a big pedigree himself, and this year it's finally working out for him now that he's on the top line. So great to see this happening. Same with Couturier, right? You just got to get on the top line with Claude Giroux, and great things happen. Great things are not happening for Wayne Simmons. He's pointless in 4, only 29 points in 49 games on the season, which is only a 49-point pace. He's playing with Nolan Patrick and Wheel. Oh, what's Wheel's last name? Jordan, right?
Jordan, well, that's his first name.
Yeah, sorry, yeah. Playing with Nolan Patrick and Jordan Wheel, which isn't so great, I guess, still on the top power play. So that's good for Simmons, but is it crazy for me to ask if you'd prefer Simmons or Konechny at this point, like say in a league that doesn't count hits, like the cupful?
It's not crazy. I would prefer Konechny, and I don't see the second half going a whole lot better for Simmons than it has, unless he gets to flip spots with Konechny, ends up back on the top line. But if that doesn't happen, I'm all for Konechny. It's been a really sad year for Wayne Simmons.
I'm just gonna throw something out there about the Sens. Patty's saying in the chat room, it's confusing when a team like the Sens are so good one year and then stink the next. Sorry, I probably shouldn't be hammering the Sens. Like last year, let's just all remember for a second. They got into the playoffs, that was good, but they played like the Rangers in Boston or whatever in the first couple rounds, while teams like Washington had to play Pittsburgh. Like they had a pretty easy road to the Cup finals, or not the Cup, the conference finals. Like the NHL playoff format is so dumb. Like it's gonna happen again this year, probably, where Pittsburgh and Washington might play each other, or I don't know. Like the whole thing is silly to me. So, anyways, I know that Sens made to the conference finals, but I don't want people to start thinking like, oh, they were like so great last year. Like I think they had a nice run for sure, and Craig Anderson stood on his head. But yeah, I don't know why I'm even saying this. Let me just move on. I don't even know. I don't even care that much about the Sens. Come on. Okay, Pittsburgh, next P team. Brian, was that dumb? Was that a really dumb rant?
Great rant.
Okay, Pittsburgh. A couple weeks ago, we were discussing if Jarry can challenge Murray for the starting job, and now he's forgotten. Tristan Jarry back in the minors, and people now have been tweeting us asking if they should be trading for adding DeSmith, who's been on a nice win streak. So that just goes to show how quickly things can change for backup goalie situations challenging for the starting job. But Brian, I know your answer. Let's just get to it. Matt Murray is going to be back with the team after the All-Star break, and I know for sure you fully expect him to resume his role as the #1 goalie. That's what you've been saying for the last few episodes. I'm with you.
Great. I'm glad to hear it. Finally.
Okay, so we don't have to worry about DeSmith. I know people are still messaging us about DeSmith. It's going to be Matt Murray. You know,
and I would even say to the people who are asking about DeSmith, like we were talking to someone who was being offered DeSmith in a trade to help them cuff with Matt Murray. And we don't even know that Casey DeSmith is going to be the cuff option you need. Maybe it's still going to be Tristan Jarry. Unclear. So just cool it on everybody not named Matt Murray if Matt Murray is healthy.
By the way, Brian, we're on Pittsburgh. I, every year, like to bet $50 on a team to win the Stanley Cup. I try to find pretty good odds. I just today finally placed my bet, $50, on the Pittsburgh Penguins. I got 15 to 1 odds on these guys. I'm going to win $750 if they win the Cup.
You know I love it when we talk about your gambling.
Whoa, because you're like, oh, this is like a family-friendly show and gambling's such a vice. We don't want to expose people to the evils that Elon is involved in. Okay, you're not even. I'm just laughing at myself right now.
Like, whatever.
Anyway, I think that Pittsburgh right now, their odds are too low or high. You know, like I feel like people aren't giving them enough credit. Like Murray's been out, things have been a little weird, but they're pretty much the same team as last year. They're gonna have a good run. Anyway, okay, let's look at their lines lately. Brian Rust came back.
I'm gonna interrupt you. Like, we can't just say they're the same team as last year. They're gonna have a good run. They're tired. We've been through this. Like, they played 2 full seasons plus full postseasons of hockey. And that might be why we've seen them have some valleys this year and see them not dominating the way we're used to seeing them. That is their biggest challenge, fatigue. Okay, yeah. Back to you, Elon.
No, I don't disagree. That's why I got such good odds on them. But they still have good players. That's all I'm saying. Anyways, I wanted to look at their lines quickly. Brian Rust came back from injury, but he was on line 4, so we don't have to worry about him. They ran with, at least on Thursday, and they've been doing this for a little while now, Crosby, Sheary, and Simone, and then Hagelin, Hornqvist, and Malkin, and then Gensel, Kessel, and Sheehan. Those were the top 3 lines. So that's like a pretty nice, balanced top 9. Dominic Simone has 3 goals and 1 assist in his last 3 games. One of your favorite random guys, Brian, Carl Hagelin, has 8 points in his last 8 games. Like I said, he's been playing with Hornqvist and Malkin, which is a really good spot. Both of these guys are probably worth streaming right now. Like I mentioned players on, what was it, Florida? Yeah, like Malgin and Bjugstad. I feel the same about guys like Dominic Simone and Carl Hagelin. Probably similar ownership in leagues and both on really good first and second lines. Who do you like better between, say, like Simone and Hagelin, and then maybe even throw in those Florida guys?
I've always had a soft spot for Carl Hagelin, but he's often let me down. I don't really have a favorite. I think I'll still take Nick Bjugstad because I just feel like if he's in that spot, he's going to get shots, and that's the most certainty you're going to get from any one of them.
Oh, sorry. Okay. Okay, and since we're on Pittsburgh, we got to mention Justin Schultz was on the top power play on Thursday instead of Letang, so that's something to watch. I know we talk about this every year, all the time. Possibly worth grabbing Justin Schultz if he's in your free agency, just in case this lasts. He had a power play assist on Thursday on that top unit. We talked about Letang's slump on the last mailbag show last week, the Patreon mailbag show. So again, Brian already mentioned it, but yeah, it was a good show. KeepItCarlsson.com/Patreon. You can still get it. Now Letang only has 1 point in his last 7 games. Want to give a quick 1-sentence summary of your conclusion you gave on the mailbag show? You went deep into Letang and what's wrong with him. People could listen to that episode for your full analysis, but give us the quick 1-line summary.
The quick one-line summary is I like Chris Letang for his second half improvement. Every single marker of variance on ice shooting percentage, IPP, they were all low enough in the first half to expect a bounce back in the second.
Okay, Brian, I feel like once we hit S in the alphabet, I feel like we're pretty far into the alphabet. So I think we're doing okay. We're on San Jose now. Big news out of San Jose is that Joe Thornton had arthroscopic knee surgery and will likely be out for a while, maybe even out for the season. Bummer, right? Such a bummer. He's been having a great bounce back year. He has 22 points in his last 25 games. That's over the past couple of months. He had a bit of a slow start. He's been so good lately. On Thursday in the 6-5 loss to the Rangers. All right, already, I'm moving forward. Okay, let's take a look at what San Jose was doing without Thornton. They were riding with Meyer and Bodker on line one with Pavelski. And then the top power play consisted of Couture, Hurdle, LeBlanc, Pavelski, and of course, Brent Burns. So the names that jump out at me here, potentially having some value, we got Kevin LeBlanc. Definitely interesting right now that he's on the Couture Hurdle line like he was before, but now also on the top power play. He had 3 assists on Thursday. I think he's probably the most promising of all these guys I've mentioned here, like Meyer, Bodker, and LeBlanc. I think LeBlanc is the one I'd want on San Jose. And by the way, San Jose has a great schedule next week, and I think they play 4 games again the following week. So he's someone that's definitely on my radar, especially in the short term. What do you think about Kevin LeBlanc?
Overall, he hasn't been that exciting, although you're right. He is interesting. He's on pace for 45 points so far. This could, if he does get a bigger role and is able to step up to it, could bump his potential up to 50 points or like maybe get a shorter run. I don't know. You think I'm underselling him? What do you think his upside is?
I don't think his upside is like hold him for the rest of the year or anything, but I think while he's on a good second line with Hurdle and Couture and on the top power play, and these things could last, right? Thornton's going to be out for a while, but at least I'd say grab him now, get that great schedule next week, get the 4 games the following week. You're not going to have more games out of anyone else you add, unless you're going to say to add Meyer or Bodker. So like Meyer has 4 points in his last 5 games, nothing on Thursday. Bodker hasn't done much aside from a 2-goal, 1-assist game versus Anaheim a week ago. Are like of those 3, would you say LeBlanc is the best one, or would you rather Meyer? I know, like you've said before, that you like Meyer. He always like comes to my mind as someone who takes a lot of shots. I know you love those shots. So do I.
No, I'd go LeBlanc of those 3.
Okay, and then are you concerned about Joe Pavelski at all with Thornton out? Pavelski has 5 points in his last 5 games. He's definitely turned his season around after a slow start, but swapping Joe Thornton for Bodker on his line can't be good.
No. And here's the thing. We were in pretty unfamiliar territory with the Sharks minus Joe Thornton. Joe Thornton has been a Shark for 13 seasons. And in those 13 seasons, Joe Thornton has missed a grand total of 12 games. He's never missed more than 4 games in a single year. Most years, he's played every single game. So we're going to have to wait and see how the Sharks readjust and recalibrate without him. My guess is that they're going to initially struggle to create offense because they're going to be making adjustments and trying new things. But maybe, I don't know, maybe like Logan Couture can really step it up and help keep the offense going. Even though he's already been doing his part, he's just going to need to do more.
Yeah, like one good potential thing that could happen for Pavelski is maybe Logan Couture just jumps onto line 1 to take over Thornton's spot and plays with Pavelski and say maybe Hurdle. Like who knows? Like they could really shake things up if things don't happen. So I definitely wouldn't be too worried about Pavelski just yet, but like a little worried. Like keep your eye on him. Maybe now might be a time to sell high depending on who you can get. Something to keep in your mind for sure. Things are going to change now that Joe Thornton is out. He's been so good, such a big driver of offense. Also, since we're on the Sharks, got to mention again, keeping in mind their great schedule of the next couple of weeks, got to mention Marc-Edouard Vlasic, who's been on fire lately. He has 9 points in his last 8 games. What's even going on here? He was basically doing nothing before this run, and then out of nowhere, Marc-Edouard Vlasic is like a really reliable, great offensive defenseman that you could add to your team. Is there like any reason to expect this to be somewhat sustainable moving forward, at least for these next couple of weeks? Would you be rushing to grab Vlasic if you need a defenseman?
Of those 9 points, he has 3 secondary assists and then 4 goals on 14 shots. So no, I'm not expecting it to continue, but it should just put him decisively ahead, at least in the short term, of other depth San Jose Sharks, like say Justin Braun, if you're looking to add someone for their upcoming 4-game weeks.
I had a little bit of a burp just as you were finishing.
Gross.
So Brian, how many more teams do you want to do here? Do you want to try them all, or do you want to just call it?
Let's just move quickly through them all.
Okay. All right, we're still. All right, I guess we're gonna have to go into hurry up mode now. But still, I mean, I'm gonna ask all the questions that I had to ask, so we'll do our best to keep going. Actually, no, it's not
come
fun
on.
for the. It's probably not fun for the listeners to have to hear me rushing. Okay. All right, next, St. Louis Blues. Jaden Schwartz came back. Great news, obviously, for all the people who had him in his IR. Great news, obviously, for everyone who had him in their IR waiting for this moment. He had an okay game, like no points, but he had 4 shots and 18 minutes and 22 seconds of ice time in the win over Colorado on Thursday. My prediction that Schenn, Schwartz, and Tarasenko would be reunited didn't come true, at least for the first game. We'll see what happens moving forward. They were running with Schenn, Schwartz, and Alex Steen, and then Barbashev, Stastny, and Tarasenko stayed together. But my prediction did come true that Paul Stastny would get bumped from the top power play. They were running Schenn, Schwartz, Steen, Tarasenko, and Pietrangelo. So I was right about at least one thing. But yeah, do you think I was right about at least one thing, though Paul Stastny scored a power play goal from the second unit. So I said that I think you could drop him, and I still actually think that you probably can in most formats. I was wrong about a lot of things about him last week, but I still think I was right overall. It just hasn't come true yet. What do you think, Brian? Are you still skeptical? Like, I know you were saying, no, people should hold on to Stastny. He's been on such a great run, but I feel like he's on power play too. And, you know, I don't even expect him to stay on this line with Tarasenko for much longer.
Well, you might be overplaying. I was saying that this is, you don't want to hold him if he does fall out. Like, just wait and see if you want to be super safe about it. But I would rather, instead of him, have the guy that you're about to mention.
Yes. Well, you always or recently have really hated this guy. So, Brian, I'm curious to know who you'd prefer between Stastny and Alex Steen, or as you call him, Alex Steenke. Steen's actually on a really good hot run right now. He has 5 points. Steen's actually on a really good run right now. He's running a 5-game point streak. He has 12 points in his last 12 games. For me, it's like an easy choice. I'd take Steen over Stastny for sure, especially because Steen's the one on the top power play. But it sounds like you'd still go Stastny.
No, I just said I'd rather Alex Steen. It's great that Steen has held his spot on the top power play, even with Jaden Schwartz returning. He looks like he's in pretty good shape to continue at a 50-point clip the rest of the way, maybe a few more, which is essentially as much as you could hope for from Paul Stastny, who, as you mentioned, is presently seeing worse deployment. So that's why I would take Alexander Steen.
Oh, sorry. I guess I hear what I want to hear. I just wanted to have an argument with you. But no, we are in total agreement as we get to the tease in our 31 team, 31 take episode. So much alliteration, right? It's fun. But the Tampa Bay Lightning, they had 4 straight games of scoring only 2 goals or less, but then they have struck. Get it? It's a pun because they're the Lightning. They've struck. Thank you. Okay, I know you like those. Okay, so they've struck with 9 goals in their last 2 games over Nashville and Philly. So lots of players obviously getting in on the fun in these last couple of games. Like I'll run through some, like Nemesnikov, 3 goals and 1 assist in those last 2 games. Kunitz has a goal and 2 assists. Both of those guys, Nemesnikov and Kunitz, have been on line 1 with Stamkos, and Stamkos obviously is doing great. He has 1 goal and 3 assists in those 2 games. Again, this is just 2 games, but just nice to see all these people starting to get points. The second line was Kucherov, Palat, and Tyler Johnson. They've all had some points. Even Yanni Gourde has been on a nice run. He has goals in each of his last 3 games from the third line. So what's the takeaway here? Like, are we back on the Nemesnikov train now that he's on line 1? He's also back on the top power play due to Palat being injured. So that was obviously good news for Nemesnikov. Not great news for the Lightning, though. Andre Palat's really good, but unfortunately he's gone, and it seems like Nemesnikov is back on that top power play and playing with Steven Stamkos. And also, Brian, is it time to start taking Chris Kunitz seriously while he's on the Stamkos and Nemesnikov line? Maybe it can last after all. I'd be curious to know like, who you'd want between, say, like Kunitz and Yanni Gourde.
It's a good question. I'm not sure, but you're right that the one big takeaway about what you just said is that Tampa Bay is a very good team that will score many goals. And that rising tide raises all ships, including the SS Kunitz and the HMS Gourde, though the pertinent point also is that if Nemesnikov was dropped to free agency, it's time to pick him up. Kunitz makes a good stream. What can I say? If he's playing with Stamkos and Nemesnikov... Sorry.
He is.
Yeah. With Stamkos and Nemesnikov, it's not as good as Stamkos and Kucherov, but it's still something. Like, he could collect points there. So you should pay some attention to him. I feel like I could resist adding him, though, in the short term.
Yeah, maybe he's the type of guy that you might want to look at for daily formats like FanDuel this Tuesday. KeepingKarlsson.com/FanDuel. By the way, or FanDuel.com/Karl if you want to join us for our contest. All right.
No. 2 ads in the show was enough. We don't have to keep calling back to it.
All right. Yeah, maybe Kunitz is the type of guy that's more like you want to grab him in like a daily FanDuel league. I don't know if I'd be adding him to my roster long term, but he's looking good. He's probably going to be really cheap, as he's on the top line, but still hasn't done much over the last year. Another guy on Tampa we have to bring up is Mikhail Sergachev. He's been healthy scratch for the past 2 games. Brian, he was supposed to take over the top power play duties with Hedman out. We were all like, everyone rushed to grab Sergachev if he was available. I was even like, he's probably not available. I hope that he wasn't available because anyone who rushed to grab him had to sit through 2 healthy scratches, which must have been very frustrating. Instead, it was Strawman there on the top power play. Of course, he had no points to show for it. Jake Dotchin was on the second power play also with nothing. So that's pretty strange that Sergachev got benched. But obviously, the coach knows what he's doing because they won both of those last 2 games very handily. Anyways, I guess at this point, it doesn't really matter. We've heard news that Hedman might be coming back in early February. They said 3 to 6 weeks for his injury. It's looking like it's going to be closer to 3. So Sergachev probably just goes back to power play 2. I don't know. What do you think's going to happen with Sergachev, though? Like, are you still as high on him for the second half of the season as you were before? Forgetting about the Hedman injury, but just as the second power play defenseman, like, are you worried about these healthy scratches, or do you think it was just a lesson being taught to a rookie, but everything's going to go back to the way they were?
This is a lesson being taught to a rookie. In Sergachev's last game before getting scratched, he saw 65% of shot attempts while he was on the ice coming against him at even strength. That's very bad. And he also took a 2-minute minor that had 2 minutes added onto it when he shouted at the ref and threw a towel. So that's why he's probably headed back up to the press box for a little while. This is just temporary. He'll learn, he'll get better, whatever. Like, that's what the coach is saying. Honestly, he'll come back and keep doing his thing. I think you can still rely on him to play regularly, consistently, and be able to put up 40-point pace the rest of the way.
Yeah, that'd be great. Hey, and the coach is saying, that's why you never throw in the towel at the referee. This is terrible.
Yeah.
I'm pulling the Brian right now. So you have to start doing an impression of me now to even things up. Okay, let's go to Toronto.
You suck.
Okay, all right. I mean, come on. Let's not be crass, Brian.
That's my impression of you.
Please. That's very hurtful. Okay. Morgan Rielly has been injured on the Leafs. He might be coming back soon, but with him injured, Jake Gardiner has been on fire. He's currently on a 5-game point streak where he's put up 9 assists in those 5 games, 2 of those on the power play. Do we expect Jake Gardiner to go back to his previous pace of barely a half point per game once Rielly is back? Or is this actually just something new we're seeing and there's a chance that Jake Gardiner can keep this up? Like, should he be owned in most leagues at this point? If you added Jake Gardiner, is it time to move on when Rielly comes back, or do you think he's going to keep this up?
No, you can expect him to go back to what he was doing before. Jake Gardiner, 9 of his last 12 points have been secondary assists, including 7 of 9 on this specific run you're talking about. And also, so of course, secondary assists can be considered noise, not something you can repeat, and you might just be getting in on those goals by luck. Anyway, I haven't seen each goal, but it's usually an indicator that what we're seeing isn't totally real. The other change that has happened to Jake Gardiner since Morgan Rielly is out, he's playing with Ron Hainsey, and I find his sudden scoring success with Ron Hainsey weird, but hey, whatever's working, great. I don't expect whatever Gardiner's doing to last regardless of Rielly being in or out of the lineup.
Yeah, Brian, Ron Hainsey, we haven't mentioned him this year, but since you mentioned him, he's been pretty good for hits and blocks, by the way. If you're in a bangers and mash league, you could probably do a lot worse than Ron Hainsey. And Ron Hainsey's been playing huge minutes, 25 plus minutes lately. So the Leafs are really leaning on him. The Leafs are definitely going to really be happy to get Rielly and Nikita Zaitsev back. Apparently Zaitsev's going to be back soon. That's going to help their defense. Maybe they won't have to rely so much on Ron Hainsey. Okay, but since we're on the Leafs, by the way, William Nylander is on a really nice run back with Austin Matthews, and they're both doing well. Nylander had a goal and 3 assists in his last 4 games. Put him down for another one of my second half upswings. I know people are probably also worried about Mitch Marner, who has disappointed in the first half. I'm not as excited about Marner, but I do think Nylander should go on my list of players who I think are going to have better second halves than first halves. Helps to be playing with Austin Matthews. Of course, I wish I could say the same about JVR, who has only 1 assist in his last 6 games, but he's been bad. Like I say, I don't know if he's going to be able to have a second half bounce back. He does have 22 shots over those 6 games, so that's good. I imagine something's got to go ensued, but that said, he's been playing with Brown and Bozak recently, and that's obviously not the best pair of line mates. Maybe JVR is a guy who's going to get traded at the deadline.
Maybe. I don't know. But I'm with you that Nylander is going to have a better second half than first, and that JVR may not.
All right, so that's it for Leafs talk. Now we're definitely near the end of the alphabet. Brian, that's a lot of teams. 31 teams when you go through them one at a time, you realize this is a pretty big league with lots of stuff going on, lots to talk about. But now we're on the Vancouver Canucks. They've been tinkering with their lines a bit, actually, since Bo Horvat came back. Brock Besser has been playing with the Sedins for a little. He also played online with Horvat and Baertschi for a bit. Horvat saw some time with Eriksson and Vanek. So we're going to have to wait and see how things land once everything settles. Where are you right now with these like older players on the Canucks that are not Sedins? Like, so basically I'm talking about Louis Eriksson and Thomas Vanek. Eriksson has had a couple big multi-point games lately, but not much otherwise. Vanek, pretty much the same. Are you interested in either of them, relative to all these other potential free agents that have been available that we've been talking about? I know this is actually kind of a boring question, but there's nothing really much to ask about the Canucks.
Yeah, we've covered them. I think we've done a pretty good job of covering them. Vanek, he's a 92% IPP this year, which is too high. That's going to regress. He's also down to 14 minutes of ice time per game. So it's going to be hard for him to keep up a 60-point pace with IPP regression and low minutes. I see him playing more towards a 50-point pace the rest of the season. So I have some interest in Thomas Vanek, but not as much as his point totals may entice you to have. Louis Eriksson, honestly, not a whole lot of interest there. Less than Vanek. He gets a couple shots per game, but I'm not seeing any reason that he's going to suddenly break out this year and significantly outperform his weak first half. And just a bonus fact to throw in, Henrik Sedin, 44 games played, 38 shots. What a guy.
How many assists? I know that Dave has always said that it's a great patron, Dave, from the Stream Scheme, which has very irregular episode schedule, but I like it when it comes out. Anyway, he likes to point out that Sedin might be able to get this elusive stat of having more assists than shots on the season, but I think he got a shot or something recently, and that really made it harder for him.
It's a real bummer when he gets those shots. Right now, he needs 8 more assists. He has 30 right now to catch his shot totals. I'm rooting for it.
That's going to be hard, but that would be pretty funny if it happens. Okay, let's go to the Vegas Golden Knights, the second best team in the NHL right now, according to the overall standings, but the number one best team in my heart, especially if... Oh, I always forget. What's Real Kid Poker? Oh, Daniel Negreanu. Especially if Daniel Negreanu is listening. Love the Vegas Golden Knights. So, Marc-Andre Fleury, like I said, he has a .942 save percentage and 12 wins in 18 games. He's been phenomenal. You said before that Mike Smith is the most reliable goalie in fantasy right now. I was planning to ask you, who would you rather have over Fleury right now for the rest of the year? I feel like Fleury's the goalie that I'd be most happy to own, which is crazy. Like maybe Holtby, I don't know, but at least Fleury's tier 1 at this point, right? Like if we were doing Schmore Goalies Board right now for the rest of the year and tiering our goalies, how could you not have Marc-Andre Fleury in tier 1? I'm interested to know, what should people do with him in a keeper league? Do you sell super high on him right now? Or do you think that Vegas is going to keep this up for years to come? Don't they have a whole bunch of great prospects? I remember back at the time of the draft, the expansion draft and the entry draft, they were everyone was saying, oh, they did a terrible job in the expansion draft, but they've got all these great prospects that they drafted in the actual entry draft, so they're going to have a really bright future. Maybe Marc-Andre Fleury becomes a really good keeper option for many years, though I guess he's getting older, so who knows how long he'll actually last. And Malcolm Subban is a good backup. What's your take right now on Marc-Andre Fleury in a keeper league?
In a keeper league, well, he is 33 years old. So I'll say 34, close to the beginning of next season. I don't know. He won the save streak at the All-Star game. Does that do it for you? I think he's probably a good option. Vegas is looking like legitimate contenders. And I believe if they're legitimate contenders this year, they'll be able to still be legitimate contenders next year. How many more years Fleury can give you? Could be skeptical. After this one, 2, maybe 3. We'll have to see how the Golden Knights evolve and what happens to their squad going forward. But he's up there. He's up there as a good option, but I would rather have Holtby.
Yeah, but it would be tough. It would be a tough keeper decision. What if you have Gibson and Frederik Andersen and Fleury? Let's say Gibson is the young guy. So even forget about Frederik Andersen. Gibson versus Fleury. Right now, you definitely want Fleury this year, even though Gibson has been fine. Gibson also has some injury issues, but he's so much younger. So it'd be tough to make that decision in a keeper league. I won't ask you to make it. That's okay. Maybe in a future episode or in the summer. Of course, we'll do our big Schmore Goalies episode this summer in our summer series. We got a lot of hockey to play before we get to that. And Brian, on Vegas. So right now we've got Marchessault, William Karlsson, and David Perron all above 70-point paces. I know you don't like answering questions about if Vegas players and their production is sustainable. So let me just ask you very quickly, which of these players do you think is most likely to be able to hit 70 points this year, or at least have a 70-point pace, because Perron missed some time?
I'm going to go with Jonathan Marchessault. And if we're going by point pace, even if Perron was healthy, I would still go Jonathan Marchessault. He's looking quite sustainable with what he's doing. The one looking the least sustainable, William Karlsson, who's still shooting at 27%, which is crazy and can't last. Yeah, all three of them have a little bit of regression to see in their on-ice shooting percentage. Like they're all being lifted by how successful Vegas has been at converting shots to goals. Probably too successful. That's going to regress a little bit over the rest of the season. So maybe they'll fall out a little bit off their paces. I'm saying giving you other reasons to know that Karlsson and Perron probably shooting a little bit better than he should as well. So Marchessault, even though he can keep up what he's doing, maybe his line mates don't, but that's just a small dent. You can still enjoy a really great season from him the rest of the way.
Okay, so sounds like if we put it together, you're saying Erik Karlsson will bounce back, and you think William Karlsson's going to slow down. I wonder if any William Karlsson owners should be throwing out some Karlsson for Karlsson trade offers and trying to sell low and buy high. That doesn't make sense. Trying to buy low and sell high, Karlsson for Karlsson. I'd love to see that trade. If you make that trade, tweet us the screenshot, because I will definitely retweet that. The elusive Karlsson for Karlsson trade, which would be impossible. Would have thought it was like crazy going into the season. Now definitely wouldn't be vetoed. I still think Erik Karlsson would win. Okay, couple teams left. We're on Washington now. Evgeny Kuznetsov left Thursday's game with apparent groin injury. Severity still unknown, so we don't know. Looks like Andrei Burakovsky got on the top power play in his absence and picked up a power play assist. Do you think he's the front runner for the job if Kuznetsov is out for a while? Earlier, when Oshie was out, we saw Brett Connolly on the top power play, but I think Burakovsky was injured at that time as well. So yeah, like Burakovsky, maybe now's his time. He's also been in the top 6 lately, playing with Backstrom and Oshie, and he's been getting better minutes, so that's good. I'm definitely not saying like people should be jumping on Andrei Burakovsky right now. Maybe wait to see the line combos at least for Tuesday, see if he's still in the top 6 and on the top power play. But I feel like he's got to be considered as a flyer, especially since at the start of the year, remember, everyone was talking about Burakovsky as like this was going to be his big breakout year, and then he was terrible. We told you a long time ago that he was a snoozer on the show. Maybe now's the time to get back on the horse.
The biggest favor you can do, well, I don't know if it's for yourself or for Andrei Burakovsky, is to reset your expectations back to before the season started, thinking, hey, there's a hole in the top 6 that he can step into and do something. Forget about the first attempt. Give him a clean slate. Let's see what he can do. I'm willing to give him that. I'm not saying it's going to work out, but it is something that we're going to be watching closely.
Yeah, so if you were grabbing him late in your draft as a, flyer to try out, Brian's saying, do it again right now, see what happens. Obviously, we'll have to wait and see how severe this Evgeny Kuznetsov injury is. Obviously, Kuznetsov is going to be on that top power play if he's healthy. Last team, Brian. We've done 30 teams, 30 takes. How about one more team and a couple takes? I guess we've done a lot more than 30 takes at this point. Okay, things aren't looking good for Kyle Connor on the Winnipeg Jets right now. He has only 1 assist in his last 6 games, and he was bumped to line 4 during Tuesday's game and stayed there for the 4-3 loss on Thursday to Anaheim. Is he in Dropsville territory for you, or do you think he can pull a Nemesnikov and get back on line 1 sometime soon? And by the way, Nemesnikov went to like line 3, not line 4. So it's even worse for Kyle Connor. Like right now, the guy who took Connor's spot on line 1, as well as Scheifele's spot on power play 1, is Jack Roslovic. So Brian, I guess, as well as giving your take on Kyle Connor, you got to tell us, who the heck is Jack Roslovic? He finally scored his first goal in his 8th game on Thursday. The fact that he took Connor's spot makes me think maybe he can continue to get some points if he's going to be on the top line of top power play. Like, we were so into Kyle Connor in that spot. How can you not be into Drac Roslovic?
I have an answer for that in a minute, but first, it's very tempting to remain patient with Kyle Connor, because if you were patient with him through the first demotion, you reaped the benefits of 6 points in 4 games that came soon after, and then he's been silent again ever since. So he definitely is getting to the point where, if he doesn't get back up on the top line soon, you can treat him just like Nemesnikov. If you were ready to drop him, or if he was dropped in your league, this is we're approaching the time where that's what you're going to do with Kyle Connor, because we have not seen a change in his status for some time now. As for Jack Roslovic, pulling him up now.
Cool.
He was a first rounder back in 2015 out of Columbus, Ohio, 25th overall, picked by the Jets, and he has been doing quite well in his debut pro season. Oh no, sorry. And he's been doing quite well in his time as a pro. He turned pro last year for the Manitoba Moose, scored 48 points in 65 games. And then this year so far, he's averaging over a point per game, 35 points in 32 games. So, hey, why not call him up, see what he can offer? I'm not sure why he got the call ahead of Mason Appleton, who is currently leading the Moose in scoring, but has also played more games, like 12 more games than Jack Roslovic. Nobody else, actually Nick Petan has a point per game pace. Nobody else does aside from Roslovic. So I guess we'll see what he does in that spot. I don't know. Connor had more of a pedigree. There was more build up to him arriving in Winnipeg and getting that spot, which is why I have a little more faith in him being able to cash in there than I do Jack Roslovic, but I am waiting and seeing.
Yeah, another guy like Chris Kunitz, like at least good for daily fantasy. Keep in mind, Roslovic, for now, is on the top line and top power play. I would also maybe give Connor a bit. It's tough, though. Like, one of our patrons rage dropped Kyle Connor. It was really funny when he posted it. So maybe you could drop Kyle Connor, but it is possible he gets back on the top line and goes on another decent run. But it has been frustrating to own him lately. By the way, Matthew Perreault, 8 points in his last 8 games from line 2 and power play 2. So he's also someone that you probably want to grab if he's still available in free agency. Okay, Brian, we've done it. 31 teams. We went through them all. How about that?
I don't know if Seattle's added. Will we be able to make 32?
Maybe we'll have to start earlier, or maybe do fewer takes per team. I can't help it. Like, once you're on a team, I feel like I want to talk about all the relevant things. But okay, hope you guys enjoyed this show. It was a pretty crazy one to prepare for, but I think we had a lot of fun, and I think it was a good one. So I hope you liked it. We actually had this whole very clever marketing idea where we were going to make it through. We thought we'd only make it through, let's say 75% of the teams. Then we were going to be like, okay, we'll talk about the rest of the teams on our bonus episode for the patrons later in the week. And I'd be like, you could listen to it if you become a patron. But then we decided, no, we want it to be nice. So we just gave you all 31 teams, but you could still thank us by becoming a patron. We still will have our bonus episode this Thursday where it'll be a regular mailbag show where we'll answer questions from the patrons. We always have a lot of fun. We also have other perks if you want to support the show. By the way, you can also support the show, not for the perks, just to buy Brian or I like a beer. Like, one of us gets a beer every month if you like the show and want to support us. So check out keepingkarlsson.com/patron, see what you can get. But okay, what else? You can follow us on Twitter. I've said that a bunch of times, @KeepingKarlsson. We always love 5-star iTunes reviews, if you'd be so kind. But with that, I will stop rambling and let's cue that outro music. And Brian, why don't you go ahead and read us the credits?
Okay. This episode of the Keeping Karlsson Fantasy Hockey Podcast was presented by Dauber Hockey and supported by our wonderful, amazing, fantastic patrons. It was researched with help from Dauber Hockey, Frozen Pool, Dauber Prospects, Corsica, Natural Stat Trick, Charting Hockey, HockeyGoalies.org, Hockey Reference, Hockey Viz, Hockey Database, Elite Prospects, Roto World, and Fantrax.
Great job, as always, Brian. Always a pleasure to talk to you on Sundays and Thursdays. Looking forward to doing it all again next week.
Until then, keep on keeping Karlsson.
We did it.
Wow.
Thanks, Ryan. Nice compliment. Thanks, Patty. Love when Patty joins. It was not many people in the chat, but like quality comments. Sometimes quality over quantity.
Quality chat tonight.
Yeah, and it was good. Like, no one was distracting Brian too much with weird talk about non-hockey stuff.
Well, I still want to know what the crossword topic was. Title, clue.
Well, you'll find it. You're in August right now, right? So probably in a few months you'll find out. Get to work.
Yeah.
Okay. So you'll do your thing. I'll do my thing, and that's that.
Sounds like a deal.
Okay.
Oh, actually, I have one thing to say to you, but maybe we'll go off air.
Okay, bye everyone.
I'm gonna rip you to shreds.
Oh, okay. So DM me if you want me to tell you what Brian told me. Bye. Thanks, everyone.
Bye. Thank you.